Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Crucible. I'm your host, Andrew Wilson. Just saw some of you at the other channel earlier, I think. But that's okay. We're just going to pretend like you're just now getting here. Tonight, we have a great debate for you between Staxioms and Jimbob. I did engage with Staxioms on a panel one night, and I actually kind of liked the guy. I thought he did pretty well. So I was happy to have him come on to the Crucible. I'd been looking for a topic that I thought he might want to engage in, and I think we found a pretty good one. So he's a first-time member to the Crucible. That's okay. You can still throw tomatoes at him. What does he care? What's he going to do about it, right? He's on our turf. I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm joking. You can also throw tomatoes at Jimbob if you want to get banned. So that's basically the rules. If it's totally I'm kidding again. This is going to be a good debate. I'm looking forward to it. Before we get into that, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube shit that you're supposed to do. What else? Oh yeah. Become a channel member. Yeah, just do all that fucking YouTube shit. Also, make sure that you watch the videos on this channel. That way we can get the watch time up. That way I can monetize this channel too. Still waiting for the strikes to fall off on the other channel, which sucks. But anyway, it's going to be a good debate. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to bring out both of our debaters, and we're going to get moving. And we're back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Crucible. Let me readjust the boxes here real quick. We have Jimbob to the right and Staxioms to the left. Staxioms, first time on the Crucible. We appreciate you coming very much. Why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about yourself very briefly, and then where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Staxioms, basically everywhere. Most of my audience is from TikTok, where I make short form TikTok videos, mostly about philosophy, gaming, and social democracy. I'm a pretty raging liberal, and I support Biden 100%. A little bit of an atheist, and excited to have this debate.
All right, appreciate that very much. Jimbob, same thing to you.
Hi, I'm Jimbob. I'm a political cartoonist made by Jimbob. Is most of my handles everywhere, IG and everywhere else. I do commentary, humor, and all this other stuff, and I like to debate some important topics, this being one of them.
Okay. And Staxioms, you may not know this, but one of the very few like peeves I have is if there's typing in the background while somebody's talking, right? Super annoying. I know that you know this. I'm not picking on you, but I am just kind of telling you, let's avoid that as we kind of go through the debate. If you need to type or something like that, make sure you mute yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that very much. The debate topic tonight is on naturalism, materialism. We're going to let Staxioms open. I understand that this could go a lot of different ways. Yeah, you have 7 minutes on the clock, Staxioms. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have 7 minutes of material prepared. Hope that's okay. But I did. I am kind of a bit of a raging atheist. I grew up Christian, Mormon specifically, and found the Bible a little incoherent. I met a lot of spiritualists, and I didn't really find their arguments any more compelling. I'm not sure what direction my opponent will take this conversation. But more than likely, he will probably take an argument similar to the so-called God of the gaps, an argument where he'll show that God or some supernatural force is allowing for all of the unexplainable behavior in the universe. And because we are learning and exploring so much more of the universe, what you have to contend with is that you are believing in a God or supernatural forces that are growing smaller and smaller every day. That personally is not a God that I would contend with. I don't know. I definitely feel like I am taking the defensive position here. I do feel like my opponent has the burden of proof to prove that there is some sort of supernatural entity or just God in general. Maybe I can't prove that that an apple is circling around the moon, just like I can't prove a lot of these supernatural behaviors exist. I think that these arguments are definitionally rely on sort of incoherent positions. And I think I'll just give up my time and let Jimbob take the floor.
Go.
Yeah, I just want to be clear with you, though, Staxioms. You do have 6 more minutes if you want to say anything else for your opening. You are welcome to do that.
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and respond to Jimbob and just I'll let him take the 7 minutes and then we can engage.
Okay, Jimbob, go ahead whenever you're ready. 7 minutes on the clock.
So the topic of the debate is naturalism, materialism coherent? The answer to that question could be pursued by an atheist. So the debate tonight is not does God exist? It's not is the God that Jimbob prays to, does he exist? The question is naturalism coherent? So the way in which we look at a worldview like naturalism, materialism, whether it's coherent, is to look at the 3 pillars of a worldview, the constituents being epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics or morality, and whether or not the worldview itself can account for it. Now, if materialism or naturalism means that everything is, in fact, the only thing there is matter, that's one position. I'm not sure my opponent takes that, but we'll hear where exactly he stands. My position tonight is that naturalism, materialism can't even account for knowledge. So we can get into the metaphysics, and I don't even think we'll end up on morality, but it's possible. I don't even think naturalism can account for epistemology, and if it can't account for epistemology and knowledge, and if there's any example of something the naturalist appeals to that is not in fact matter, the position is pretty much over. And so that'll be my task tonight. That's all I have.
Gentlemen, I appreciate very much the opening statements. I think that maybe it's a good thing that the opening statements weren't too long so that both of you guys can explore your various positions. Before we get into that, make sure all of you out in chat land, go to Dono Chat if you want to send in a super chat for either of the debaters tonight. I don't know if it's linked. Actually, I better check and make sure it's linked at the top, but that's where you'll be able to send in a super chat.
Mm-hmm.
It is there. Okay. Usually, you could just send it in on YouTube, but we're on the backup channel. So you can send in through Dono Chat. Of course, we'll be reading those off. We will be taking callers tonight after this debate is done. That way you can put both of these gentlemen to the question. You can hop into the Discord if you want to do that. So without further ado, the floor is open. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go. Go ahead.
Yeah. So essentially your argument is that matter doesn't account for knowledge. I do think that generally whenever you structure some sort of philosophical groundwork, you have to take some axioms just sort of you have to start with some sort of groundwork. And I generally agree with Descartes, who generally took knowledge and existence sort of as axiomatic, like that basically we have to start somewhere. And if we keep drilling this hole down to the ground, we just kind of drive ourselves crazy. So I don't know the issue with taking knowledge and existence as axiomatic. I don't know why that's an incoherent position. I can't. Is he muted? I think he's muted. I can't hear either.
Sorry, Sarah, is that better? I think
I can hear you now.
And now
Sorry.
Andrew's muted.
Okay, I can hear Jim and not Andrew.
Because knowledge itself, right, is not found in matter. So it's not identical to matter. There's nothing material about knowledge. There's nothing, and that's not even the only thing. Knowledge can't even be accounted for from the materialistic position because the very process of coming to knowledge or even making a proposition would just be the result of mechanics, biological, chemical, laws of physics, laws of nature. It would just be a consequence. So this concept of like thinking or coming to knowledge or evaluating truth claims or doing anything like that would just be basically a symptom of dominoes falling, similar to the bubbling of, say, a hot springs in northern Colorado. It's just a happening. So no, you couldn't take Descartes because if you're holding a materialist position or a naturalist position, you would actually have to find and isolate something called knowledge in the physical. If you appeal to anything that's not physical to then ascertain some truth or examine the external world, you're already outside of the naturalist paradigm. And that doesn't even we're not even talking about the fact that there's a mind in play that's examining things, which isn't also not found in nature.
A mind that's examining things isn't found in nature.
No.
Maybe I don't have a hard knowledge enough on philosophy to fully like understand your positions. But you're essentially saying that the mind and perceiving things in itself, like what do you account? I'm curious what you account for this outside of nature.
Well, what I account for is irrelevant to whether materialism and naturalism can account for the mind, which is the thing that's spotlighted today. We can get into that later, but I really want to cross-examine your position, which is to say, oh, naturalism and materialism is coherent. Well, if coherent means consistent, if coherent means it accounts for knowledge, the existence of knowledge, the ability to apprehend and hold knowledge, the ability to hold two claims simultaneously together and then examine which one is more coherent, then naturalism can't do it. Because, again, materialism or naturalism, basically the consequence of it is that everything we're doing right now, the sounds coming out of our mouth, are merely the symptoms of strict mechanistic processes. And so if you say opinion A and I say opinion B, and then we leave it to some other person, we're calling a person, which in naturalism would just be a machine. If we leave it to them to examine the two propositions, the two opinions, their opinion is no different than ours. It's just a consequence of matter in motion. It's a consequence of strict biological law, laws of nature, laws of physics, chemical reactions. And I don't think a materialist or a naturalist can account for, oh, let's just give can we give ourselves a mind, a thinking mind, a self, a brain, something that's not identical to just brain matter, that examines things and has access to knowledge, and the materialist and the naturalist can't do it.
I don't know. I sorry. And maybe we've just got the wrong person for this debate essentially, but I want to apologize. Just to begin with, but from my understanding, I don't understand why it's so incoherent for us to basically just say that we have memories that are basically explained by neurons that are passing information through each other, and we make logical arguments based off of axioms that we pre-exist. I don't understand why we have to appeal to some sort of hidden third party source. I don't see a gap in knowledge. I don't see a yeah. Go ahead.
I want to clarify something.
Sure.
You're describing neurons and knowledge of neurons, right? Memories.
You use knowledge, and I don't know if I fully understand what you're referring to.
Do you have knowledge of something called a memory, do we know what the concept of a memory is together? All three of us probably?
Sure,
Right.
sure.
So we have knowledge of what we call a memory, what we're referring to as a memory. What I'm saying is, as you describe the physical things that make up a memory, neurons firing, some crinkles in the brain, storing information that can be somehow gathered by a processing tool called the brain, what I'm saying is that even your assessment of that would also just be physical things happening. So us talking right now, sorry, my computer, us talking right now would just be the outcome of inputs, like
Yeah.
input, output. Do you understand?
Correct. Yeah.
So I want to know from your position, how is us talking and thinking and trying to figure out the truth of the matter, right? Using philosophy, using knowledge, using information, using the laws of logic, and these things. How is it different than water coming out of the ground?
How is it different? I don't
Yeah.
know if it is different. I feel like
So
if we took, go ahead.
I'm saying if it's not different,
Okay.
then we don't have access to knowledge. And that therefore materialism is incoherent.
Walk me
Why?
through that. So
Okay,
because you feel like I think that basically it's just inputs and outputs, right?
Mhm.
That we all of my behaviors are explained by some sort of predetermined
Determinism.
base.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%.
Sure.
That you feel like knowledge can't be attained.
Right. Why? Because any conclusion we come to would be determined by a mechanistic law-based system. So how would we separate what's the correct assessment of reality or philosophy or any description of reality or anything we come to and think of if it's no different than a bubbling water coming out of the ground? Then whatever you come to, right, in this debate, whatever I say, whatever you say, would be just determined from the inputs and the mechanism at work. How could it ever be not that?
I kind of agree with that. Sure.
So, but you agreeing with that would just be caused by mechanisms. You understand?
Sure.
So you can't come to knowledge because a third person, let's say Andrew wasn't the moderator and he was a listener who was going to decide between us which one he thought was right about the world. Even his assessment would be determined. Therefore, it's endless, right? It's an endless, so you could never come to knowledge because there's no independent viewer or appraiser.
I think that you're presupposing that we understand, like that you are. I think you're defining knowledge, and I don't know if I fully grasp your particular definition, because generally what I would agree with all of your assessments that essentially all of my behaviors could be explained by some sort of past indicators or a chain of dominoes. 100% determinism. Yeah.
Not
and that we don't
explained.
necessarily have free will.
No,
Yeah.
not explained though, because explained would assume we have knowledge. It would just be determined. It would just be, it is, right? So not explained, actually. It would just be determined. So an explanation, do you understand the consequence of the position is that an explanation post hoc of what is occurring would also just be determined?
I feel like you lost me. And I apologize.
Thinking,
I don't have a hard background in philosophy.
If thinking itself and coming to conclusions and appraising statements and understanding, trying to understand and grasp the external world, all of these things, if the very process that I'm speaking to is determined just strictly by mechanics and biology and laws of physics and stuff, right?
Sure.
So if all thinking and all coming to any conclusion is all determined by material, then coming to actual knowledge, determining one is accurate or coherent from another sound coming out of someone else's mouth, you couldn't actually come to the knowledge of which one was right or wrong.
I feel like you're bypassing your argument here, because I don't know if you're proving that at all. All you're saying is that I don't know if you're proving that knowledge can't be attained. All you're saying is that knowledge is, or you're basically just saying that you're kind of taking a morally anti-realist position, that like basically we don't necessarily have any strict foundation that we can rely on, that we're all kind of just winging it, I guess you could say. And I would kind of agree with that.
Right. Well, then it's self-refuting to argue, right? Because you couldn't know anything.
I'm not saying that we couldn't know anything foundationally, but I think we have to move along as if we do. Does that make sense?
Could you know that we couldn't know anything foundationally?
Could we know that we couldn't know anything
foundationally?
No, probably not. No.
So then that can't be true.
I don't know. I don't know if it can't be true. All you're saying is that it can't be proven, which we kind of have to take. I think with any philosophical framework, we have to take some sort of axioms as as self-proven. Yeah, essentially.
Proven would assume there's a sufficient methodology for coming to knowledge.
No, axioms generally don't have to be
hang on, guys.
proven.
I do want to say too, Jimbob, make sure that when Staxioms is responding, you give him enough time to respond. Go ahead, Staxioms.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. I think, yeah. I feel like definitionally, axioms do not have to be proven, that we essentially have to start our framework with something and then continue along down the road. And I don't know of any coherent positions that are fully reflexive, that are circular, that you can define itself and not have to start at a position that can't be defined. Does that make sense? Or that can't be proven?
Okay, but I'm saying if you take a naturalist or a materialist position, axioms themselves are not even found in nature. You're already appealing to the laws of logic, and if your axioms are the laws of logic, then you're at least leaving out one essential item in your worldview that says, well, materialism is probably the case and naturalism is probably true, except for the very thing that I need to rely on as an axiom. Those aren't found in matter or material. Or in the, any sort of, you can't find them in a tree. You also can't find things like information, like, these things you have to also assume. So it seems to be an endless axiomatic question begging. So how do you, if you just rely on axioms, can anyone just create any axiom and just rely on it?
I think that there could be incoherent positions if you take axioms and they end up, you can cause paradoxes within your axioms. If you create, if you select for specific axioms, you can know that they're false if they create paradoxes in your world frame. But I don't know if that's, I don't think that my specific philosophical framework has any paradoxes, or at least none that I've seen. So I don't have to reconcile those axioms. Does that make sense?
It makes sense if you had a justification for a method for obtaining truth. If you say we look at the axioms and if they lead you down to some incoherent position or some sort of a paradox or a contradiction, then they're false. Essentially, what you're saying. Yeah. So you're actually appealing to a methodology. I'm just saying the very methodology you're appealing to is already outside of the natural world and outside of material. There's no place in matter in the world physically where you can see that process occurring.
If that is your argument, that essentially naturalism can be proved false because all axioms have to rely on somewhere outside of nature because because they're immaterial. Mm-hmm. Then yeah, I guess I would have to largely agree with you, but I don't, basically you would have to find some sort of groundwork that cannot be proven necessarily and then continue from there. But I don't know if any naturalist or materialist is claiming that, and maybe I'm not familiar enough with the philosophy, but I don't think that anyone is saying that even axioms can be proven by nature.
No, not proven. I would say, now I'll try to get your view on this because people take different views. Some people take a strict view that all is material and that's all there is and everything else is illusory kind of thing. Naturalism being like everything can be accounted for through natural processes, or the natural world is really all that there is that we have. I'm saying either of those positions, as soon as you appeal to universal concepts, information, laws of logic, the mind, it would be in a way the regularity in nature that you're relying on can't account for the regularity in nature. So the regularity doesn't give the regularity; you just assume it. Induction, you just kind of go, well, it seems to be the case that this is the way it is, right? What I'm saying is, through that position, if you, and you kind of agreed, is that you're appealing to something that's immaterial at some point.
Not necessarily. I think that we're continuing, kind of the philosophy that I generally take is that you have to continually, you have to move on as if what you're saying is true until it's proven false, and then you have to re-examine your axioms, because we can't constantly reconnect every single thing that we take for granted in this life, because we've all taken those philosophy classes, or maybe I don't know how many people have, where it's just like, what is a chair, and you just kind of lose your mind. And the same thing kind of happened with the cart. I think that at some point you have to stop, and you have to accept that some things simply are, and then move forward. But I think after that point, there is no reason to believe in anything outside of nature, at least as far as I'm seeing. And if your contention is just with those axioms, I think I would largely agree, but I don't know of anyone who has, I don't know of anyone who wouldn't agree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but but that position, and I'll probably move off of the knowledge, because there's other categories I can point to, is that you're still assuming that there's a methodology, right? That's not just bound by natural law, physics, and chemical reactions. You're saying independent of chemical reactions and determined processes, we can come to truth about whether or not a view is coherent or true or false, right? You're assuming that we can come to true and false conclusions, right?
I can assume that we can come to true or false conclusions.
You are assuming that we can, right?
I suppose. I guess what I'm saying is, I do have a little bit of a math background. I studied math in college mostly. I have a minor in it. And I do think that a lot of the specific positions that we take we kind of just make them up, like we have, like Euclidean math, and then we've realized that, we don't necessarily need those axioms anymore. And we can kind of take any sort of specific axioms, and as long as we follow without any paradoxes, we can describe material conditions about the world. But I don't, just because we're describing those materials in ways that are fairly arbitrary, doesn't mean that those materials exist somewhere else supernaturally. Does that mean, I don't know if I'm making sense?
Well,
right now.
If you're talking about using math, I would say before you got to math, you needed logic to be in place. So you couldn't assume math and figure out new ways of describing the external world using math without first abiding by the laws of logic, which, by the way, are also not found as material in nature. So you'd have to kind of...
Yeah, but they're not really found anywhere. We're kind of kind of making them up as we continue.
Wait a second. Are you saying we made up the laws of logic?
Generally speaking, yeah.
What are the laws of logic?
Well, so I have a much stronger idea in math than I do philosophy. So I'm gonna use math, if that's okay, just to pivot. So some things that we take for granted is that parallel lines can never cross each other. And that's a Euclidean way of thinking, right? Is that parallel lines do not cross. And Euclid had 5 different axioms that he used to sort of describe his worldview. And then we realized that there's a whole separate other world that we can create if we suddenly decide that parallel lines suddenly can't or can cross anymore, and you can get into a lot of the non-Euclidean spaces, and you realize that a lot of these arbitrary decisions, maybe not arbitrary is the right word, but these decisions are generally just fully decided upon. As long as they don't prove any paradoxes, we just continue along as is. These don't exist anywhere, and we can change them, reflect them, counter them, as long as they don't create paradoxes, and there's no issue. So they don't exist
Okay, so what you just described is a mathematical expression. Two lines don't intersect. Two parallel lines don't intersect. That's a description in math or in geometry of the law of non-contradiction, law of identity. And so the laws of logic, before you get to describing, right, in mathematical terms, you abide by, because you have no other choice, to the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. So we didn't create those. And the reason we couldn't create those is to create anything conceptual in such a way would be appealing to those very laws. So the concept of we created the laws of logic and we made them arbitrary, the very act of creating, like even in your mathematical expression of it, you're actually abiding by those laws. You can't not. So to try to deny one of the laws that I mentioned, you're appealing to those very laws. And so, no, we didn't generate arbitrarily the laws that I'm referring to, which are seen as, synonymous with the laws of thought. Now, I understand you went into math, but math is further down the road from logic. So you couldn't have math without logic. So it needs logic, right?
So what laws of logic do you think exist outside of nature, and that exist like outside of humans? That
law of identity you can't find the law of identity in nature.
That like 1 equals 1, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or it equals it. It doesn't need to be a 1 or a number. Numbers themselves, another metaphysical category not found in nature. But yeah, any of the laws of nature are not found. And they actually, some people say this. They say, well, the laws of logic just describe nature. I would disagree. When I say the law of identity, that doesn't actually describe an apple it abides by describing an apple. You need to abide by the law of identity to make it distinct from the tree or something else.
So my issue with this, and again, I'm going to default to math just because that's sure. Generally my subset. And I understand if that's not necessarily something that you're super familiar with, I apologize. But something that I do definitely know in math is that you can create contradictions through identity, where 1 actually equals 0 if you follow subsets that we kind of created arbitrarily, like dividing by 0 or something that we just decided we can't do because it breaks those axioms. And we just kind of, instead of grappling with the paradoxes, we just said, you know what, we're just going to create a new rule where we can't divide by 0 because it just creates these sort of paradoxes with our axioms. And I don't think like you can grapple with a mathematical system where 1 does equal 0 and you can divide by 0. It just won't explain that much, but that is a valid and consistent mathematical
but that's
reasoning.
First of all, math is you can do math without it being a description of hard reality. And so you're talking about theoretical math descriptions in which that's possible, but that's a logical system. So you still need to use the main laws of thought that I referred to. Law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and excluded middle. So you're saying in math, but you're basically saying A doesn't have to always equal A, right?
Correct.
Because there's this mathematical equation we can kind of play with where it falls flat, or we could remove the excluded middle in some of the programming and such, right? I'm saying those are extensions of logic. You're extrapolating further, but they still abide by the first 3 classical rules, right? Because otherwise you couldn't describe what you just described without. So what I'm saying is, when you said we arbitrarily came up with the laws of logic, now I think we had a different idea of what we're describing when we're talking about the laws of logic. To be clear, when I talk about the laws of logic, it's the law of identity, excluded middle. Yeah. And so
could you define excluded middle? Sorry, I'm not sure.
Well, it has to be it's either one thing or the other. It's not both, and it's not somewhere necessarily, I guess, in between. It's basically maintaining the law of non-contradiction and the law of identity. So you can't have like 2 things. It's basically an extension of the law of identity.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. If it's an extension, I don't know why it's considered a separate axiom, because it should just be able to be defined by the law of identity. But that's immaterial.
Well, there was an old philosopher who said we don't need the excluded middle, and the person he was talking to said you just used it. But the point is, they're not arbitrarily defined, right? Because you need them to define anything. So there's no way around it. It's like saying like truth is not absolute, right? It's like you're actually appealing to a truth claim. You're making an absolute claim against the thing you're saying doesn't really hold true. So it ends up being a problem there. And I think we're not talking about fuzzy logic. We're not talking about like all I don't know how many there are now. Maybe like 15. I could be wrong. Different forms of logic found in software and mathematics. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the laws of thought and how we interact and engage with the external world? How do we know things to be true? And to go back to your previous point a while back, you were saying, well, axioms. I asked if anyone can develop any axiom. And you said, well, they can, but if it proves false. And I asked, well, are you assuming that there's a methodology that can be accounted for under naturalism?
So how I would actually describe it is that you can have an inconsistent worldview. It just wouldn't be helpful, if that makes sense. Like, you can create axioms that lead to contradictions, and it would still be consistent. It just wouldn't be helpful, if that makes sense. Because go ahead. Sorry.
I just don't want you to run too far without clarifying.
No, fair enough.
Helpful, is that pragmatism based on an arbitrary goal?
Correct. So that us humans decide. Okay.
So if I decide that it's pragmatic for me to believe something untrue, or let's say horrific as a behavior, you would accept that as long as it was pragmatic and fit an arbitrary goal.
Wait, if it's horrific, you're begging the question. If it's horrific, then I wouldn't agree that it's pragmatic.
But it would still be consistent with the system you're proposing, which is, well, if it's consistent with the person's goals, right? Not your goals. Some person who has a goal, right, to believe something false, right? But it's useful to them to believe that it's false.
No,
you would accept that.
No, I'm saying that the only reason we choose to have sort of true axioms that don't lead to paradoxes or contradictions is because they're helpful. Because if they led to paradoxes, they just wouldn't be helpful to people.
Well, I'm saying helpful begs the question. I said, what's helpful? Is it arbitrary?
Yes, it is arbitrary.
Yeah, so helpful, then you can't really appeal to helpful, because helpful would assume we all have the same goals, we have the same.
No, it does not imply that.
But then helpful just means what you find helpful.
Correct.
Okay. So again, it's the same example. If I found it helpful to believe in something not true, then you'd have to just accept it as true for me.
I think that there are a number of cases in which people believe things that are definitionally not true, that are helpful to that individual, that are generally consistent enough to exist in the real world, that, yeah, essentially, like all axioms. Am I making sense here? Sorry, I feel like I kind of got lost in my own head.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the truth, as you define it, is simply that which works.
I'll contend with that. Sure.
So the truth is subjective because what works is arbitrary.
Generally speaking, yeah.
So is the truth being subjective not subjective, or is that an objective statement?
I will treat it as objective until I see any other indicator that it isn't. Does that make sense? I move along as if it's true.
But that's a contradiction.
Correct. But it works for me. So it's actually that's what I'm trying to say, is that that's kind of how humans behave. We move along as if things are true, even if they are not.
Okay, hold on. I just want to reframe this and correct something. Maybe I misheard it. Before you said, well, you can create any axioms, but until they contradict and then they're proven false. But now you just said arbitrarily, that you can generate any sort of beliefs arbitrarily, so you can believe something that's not true as long as it works. So the truth is whatever works. And I said, isn't that subjective? And you said yes. And I said, well, is it objective that the truth is subjective? And you said yes. And so there's a contradiction. The truth is either objective and absolute, or it's subjective and you couldn't know it was subjective, basically, because that would be a truth claim.
I think every philosophical system has to have some axiom at some point, and I think that's just where the groundwork lies for my system. It's just that we can't burrow deeper than this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I reject it because it's very Enlightenment. It assumes that there's brute fact, and you just kind of.
Well, hang on, guys. Before we get into the rest of this, we're 40 minutes in at this point. We've got about another half hour to 40 minutes of debate left. I'm actually enjoying it, and I'm sure the audience is enjoying it quite a bit as well. But I need to do a little shameless shilling for the channel, and make sure to let everybody know, once again, to like, share, subscribe. Watch the VODs on the backup channel, which are on right now. We want to get that over 4,000, so that 4,000 watch hours, so that I can monetize this channel as well. Send in a super chat through Dono Chat. You'll find the Dono Chat link at the top. You just click on that. You can send in whatever denomination and chat that you want. We will get to all of those super chats, and we're also taking callers tonight. So if you want to call in, put Jimbob or Staxioms to the question, you're most certainly welcome to do so. And now I'm sorry to cut in there, guys. Sometimes that helps people actually collect themselves, though. So let's move right back into the debate. Go ahead.
I want to go to axioms for a second. For you to take an axiom, does reality need to be a certain way before you can even come to that axiom?
Does reality have to be a certain way in order to take that axiom? Can you give an example? I don't know if
Well, give me one of your axioms. That would be more fair. If you gave me just one of your axioms that you believe is something you can rest on, and you're like, well, I'll rest on this. I can't dig any further. Give me like some axiom that you think is ground level.
The one that you mentioned earlier, which is that truth is subjective, right? And then you said, isn't that objective? And I would say yes. And I don't know. I think that would just have to be an axiomatic statement.
That truth is subjective?
Correct.
Okay, so if truth is subjective, but the very axiom is a contradiction, do you
I don't believe that it's a contradiction.
If truth is subjective, is
yes.
true, then it's objectively true that truth is subjective, therefore not subjective.
Can you I'm curious if you can name an axiom that you feel like doesn't
I reject axioms because they're basically, this is why I reject axioms, because they assume brute fact without faith. Two, they when you ask, well, why don't you need to justify an axiom? The answer is you don't need to justify an axiom. You just take it.
Well, it's not that you don't need to; it's that you have to.
It's ad hoc. No. But if I reject
the opposite, you're not starting at the end. You're starting at the beginning.
What if my axiom is rejecting axioms?
Yeah, like that. This is what I'm saying, is that really any system can be like, it depends on how useful it's going to be. And here is where I'm going to default back to math, where you can ask the question, hey, are parallel lines, do they ever intersect? And it depends on the system that you're talking about. Legitimately, it depends on what truth system you're using to decide what is true and what is false. Because in some systems, absolutely parallel lines intersect. They have to. And in some and most Euclidean systems, they do.
I'll give you one, and based on your own reasoning.
Sure.
Truth is absolute, which is the opposite of your axiom.
Yeah, I would generally disagree with that. Yeah.
But if you disagreed, but your axiom is truth is subjective, you have no basis to disagree because you're assuming truth is absolute and not subjective.
I understand you picking apart axioms, but I don't know of a system that doesn't have the same flaw.
No, not any axioms. I'll grant axioms just because I don't want to go off into the weeds. I'll just grant you I'll entertain your axiom. Let's say my axiom is truth is objective and absolute, and your axiom is truth is subjective. Yes. I'm saying you have to actually appeal to my axiom for yours to make any sense at all.
No, I'm saying that your system could be helpful to ascertain some sort of knowledge, and so would mine. And it did like that knowledge.
Not if truth is subjective. There's no knowledge.
Why? If truth is subjective, I don't know why knowledge can't be gained nonetheless.
What do you to say that it's gained is begging the question. That means there's something that's called knowledge that's actually occurring that you're obtaining, right?
I suppose. Like I don't.
So is that happening, or is that just a subjective experience?
But like it depends on the system. Like what's the derivative of x squared? I don't know. If we're looking in some non-Euclidean systems, that question doesn't even make any sense. You know, like it really just depends on the system that you're using, and does that system serve a specific purpose? Like everything's teleological. It just depends on the outcome. And I like this picking apart at systems until they come to the bare roots, and then recognizing that, like, you know, they're going to have some things that are going to have, like, you know, we use the term axioms over and over and over again because they cannot be defended, because you can't have some sort of circular system that doesn't have its bare ground somewhere. Like you can't prove that 1 equals 1. You're just going to say, well, 1 obviously equals 1.
I'm saying that you couldn't come to axioms or knowledge without first something else being true before axioms.
How do you prove that 1 equals 1? I'm curious. How do you prove the identity theory? Because you keep trying to assemble my system, right? And I'm wondering how you could have the same thing about yours. How can you prove that 1 equals 1?
Well, in my system, something like doing math, which is, by the way, can be done outside. You don't need to transfer 1 + 1 into the physical space. You don't need 2 apples, for instance, right, to know 1 + 1 = 2. My worldview accounts for the mind, and that's the whole that's like the crux of this position for you, is that naturalism. You're talking about coming to knowledge. You're talking about axioms. You're talking about truth. You're talking about truth being subjective.
Yeah.
Now, even if truth is subjective, is completely contradictory and self-refuting, right? You should throw it out based on it being self-refuting. Hold on. But the mind, you're still operating as if there's a you that has like goals and is viewing something, and that there's some being or mind appraising truth.
Yeah,
right?
and that's where I asserted at the beginning of this that Descartes basically started with the axiom, I think, therefore I am. Like, I have to start somewhere. I have to start that the mind exists and that I live on this planet, and I'm not just some construct of some AI that was developed 20,000 years in the future.
But don't you reject? Didn't you say you reject axioms if they are self-refuting or incoherent?
I have a quick question for you, and I'm curious because you say that your system does not rely on axioms, and you have consistently mentioned the laws of logic. How can you prove that 1 equals 1? How can you prove that the law of non-contradiction exists without itself using non-contradiction? All of your systems rely on some sort of.
I just don't call those axioms. Those are just laws.
But they can't be proven, right?
Prove a law? Prove the law of identity? No, you
Correct.
can't prove. The term prove is mathematical.
Correct.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I agree.
You assume them. No, you assume them.
I agree.
And then you ask if you have justification for assuming them.
Yes. No, 100%.
I'm saying naturalism is no justification for assuming laws of logic, thinking, mind, information, knowledge, epistemology. There's no epistemology that's justified under the naturalist materialist lens.
I don't know why. Like, yes, there's no true knowledge, but I don't know why epistemology doesn't exist.
If you
like, there's no objective that lives out. So there's no the Platonic in the Plato idea of like literally there is a chair that exists somewhere outside, and this chair is just a material representation of that, and all of these things exist somewhere immaterially. No, I don't think that any knowledge can inherently be gained, but I don't think that knowledge is worthless. Does that make sense? I think that knowledge can be gained so far it can be helpful towards me existing in this world, and that's positive.
Right, but I'm saying for you to assess what's helpful and not helpful, are you doing that, or are you a machine that's just in a physical process?
No, I'm doing that because I'm taking the axiom, I think, therefore I am. I'm a human being on this earth, at some point I can't continue proving it.
So you reject materialism and
No, I think that every system has axioms, including yours.
No,
and
I didn't say axioms. I said you reject naturalism and materialism, which is a presupposition, not an axiom.
Do you think that? So maybe I'm not familiar.
You said you exist, right?
Correct.
Okay, can you hold that materially?
I'm lost.
Can you hold you, yourself, the
Can
mind,
I hold
Staxioms?
me?
Yeah, the entity, the being, the subject of existence.
Do you mean hold as in like physically hold, or like mentally hold?
The I you refer to, that Descartes, he assumed an I, right?
Correct.
I'm saying, can you, from a materialist, naturalist position, isolate and find that I, or do you
No,
assume
but every system is going to be incoherent at this position because they all have some assumptions that they have to rely on.
Okay, hold on.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, so I want to just reframe this then. You came to the debate defending that naturalism and materialism is coherent, and your conclusion is that all views are incoherent.
No, I think that axioms are a fine thing to hold. Otherwise, they're going to be constantly circular. I think that it's completely coherent to have axioms, and and to not necessarily be able to justify them.
Okay, so you're okay. So in a world,
And I don't know of a sorry, real quick. I don't know of a system that doesn't have those assumptions.
It's not about the assumptions. It's about the justification. Do you have a reason to assume such things? A mind.
I don't know of any system that can have that can have assumptions that can't be justified using those assumptions. That is just a position that does not exist. As far as I'm aware, I'm not familiar with any position or system.
So your position is, I can justify the me, the I, that you admittedly said is immaterial and outside of nature, not found in nature. You accept that, but you accept that on top of the materialist view because no other view can deny the I. So you grant yourself at least one massive immaterial concept, right? The I.
I suppose.
Okay. So you reject materialism.
I don't
you're
think
just on your way
I don't
out.
think that's rejecting materialism.
You're just graduating. You're just graduating.
I don't think that any.
It's inconsistent. Is it not inconsistent with materialism?
No, because any axiom is going to have positions that can't be assumed by those positions.
Axiom is another thing not found in nature, though. Now you're just adding to the list of
but every single thing, like
information.
I'm so curious about your system that you feel like that you have a system that doesn't have these assumptions that can't be or that can be justified. Outside of those.
Oh, I'll make it simple, but this tonight's again is not about.
Sure, that's not
position.
the debate.
Okay,
I'm curious because I feel like I just.
Let me put it quickly.
I didn't even think that this was going to be the argument that was going to be today because that's just the nature of every system that I'm aware of. Every philosophy structure, every mathematical structure, you have to start with some baselines so that you can move forward.
Yeah,
and
my baseline
you're just sort of stuck in nowhere.
Yeah, my baseline would be. Baselines themselves require an absolute source.
If you prove
accept,
that?
No, it's not a prove. It's faith-based, and everybody.
Okay.
Hold on. You're not letting me talk.
I apologize. Sorry.
The same way you say everybody takes axioms, I would actually argue further that everyone has a faith-based view. Everybody has a faith-based view.
Sure.
And so the question is,
I would actually a little bit agree with you. I do think that the faith in those axioms are required in order to move forward in your life so that you can start looking at the world materially.
Yeah, we have faith that we exist. We have faith in the law, the regularity in nature. We have faith that, your mind is not my mind, that we're actually two people talking, that we reject solipsism, right?
Sure.
You have faith in your reasoning. Well, by the way, you have faith. By the way, your performance tonight, you have faith, and I'm happy that you have this position, and I hope you explore it more. You have faith that your thinking, that your thinking is not identical to just processes in motion. Like that there's an actual you.
I do contend with this. Yeah.
Right.
I do contend with this. I think that you're kind of onto something. And maybe this is just going to be I don't know of this philosophy existing outside of this is something sort of I've grappled with personally and I've come to a conclusion with, but very much the way that I operate is I know something is false and continue along anyway. If
Intuition?
That makes sense. Yeah. Like essentially you could call it faith if you want to. Like I did grow up very Christian and I still have those aspects of it that you have to have faith in order to move forward, but then you have to move forward as if it's material. Does that make sense?
Well, it's like you're playing a pretend game that you're just in a material object.
If you want to see it that way, that's fine.
Even though the very process of examining the external world uses and appeals to immaterial things all the time, universal concepts, description, even the term, by the way, the external world is not even a material thing. The very notion, the abstract,
the notion of the abstract exists. Wait,
no, the notion of the external world itself is not identical. It's not found in the external world. So these categories. So we're always. So
you're saying like fiction is. I don't understand.
I'm not. No, I'm not going into the fiction. I'm saying that that when you examine and move forward, admittedly with faith, you have faith that you're reasoning properly. You have faith in that other people exist. You have faith in the consequences of the physical laws. You have faith that a truck will kill you if it runs you over. There's a lot of things that you appeal to, but we take it ad hoc. We take it like, well, of course. But we still have faith in those things. And I'm saying your very participation in the world, the external world, you're already appealing to things and having faith into things. You're putting your faith into things that are not found in the world, like information.
Sure.
Like no one can point to any physical thing that is identical to information. Now, maybe you can cheat and say something's data, but if I define information as data plus semantics, that's where meaning comes in. And I don't mean meaning like deep meaning of your life, like a meme. I mean when you pair data with meaning or semantics, you get information, and that requires minds. Now, if you reject minds, which I'm glad that you kind of reject that you're just some machine, right? That's just operating only according to law. So now, I'm not saying you can escape the laws. I'm saying that you're not purely law. There's someone else in there, whatever you call it, the consciousness.
No, I don't think that person exists, but I continue as if that person does. Does that make sense? I think like that is generally my philosophy, is that like I have no reason to prove that I am not, like we have so many sociological and psychological experiments that show how much we're governed by like social and biological processes, that I don't know if I could prove that there's anything externally. But if I give into this idea that there is a robot, that I'm basically just input, output, then I think that we just kind of fall apart. Like you can kind of see it as like Wile E. Coyote just wandering around the cliff,
what I'm
and
getting
then falls
is
down
that
if he looks down.
So I'm getting that you believe in a sense that it's just matter in motion, and you're kind of the dark truth of the matter is you're just a robot, but you live as if you're not a robot.
I suppose so. Yeah. I think you can think that that's incoherent if you'd like, but I do think that is the way that I move forward in my life. And I don't know why that's inherent. I don't know why that's any more inherently not a correct system as yours.
Well, because
does that make sense?
Because if it were true, you couldn't possibly know it.
If it were true, there's no way you could possibly know it.
Let me frame it clearer. If it's true that you're just a truth-seeking machine, but you have no free will in the matter, and you have no mechanism to evaluate two different claims, right? A mind. Let's say what you call thinking and examining two different views, right?
Just a robot,
is just determined, right?
Just an AI. Yeah.
Now, if that was true, what I'm saying, you couldn't possibly know it, because knowing it would just assume that there's some process independent of that machinery. You understand? So
I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know why an AI couldn't be aware that they themselves are an AI. I don't know why that's self-defeating.
No, an AI would
or a robot, however we want to describe it.
That would require a human mind. The reason you know what a robot is because there's a human that has a mind that's independent. That's not a robot.
So you're saying that the only reason we think is because of some sort of like, basically because we see the effects, there must be a cause. Is that what you're appealing to right now?
No, I'm saying if you accept strict materialistic determinism, right, that the universe is a giant mechanism, a machine in motion, then thinking and making propositions and coming to knowledge would be an illusory thing that's happening, right? And I said, if that's true, if it's true that the universal mechanistic deterministic view is true, you couldn't possibly know it was true, because knowing anything would be determined. This concept of knowing or looking back and being like, well, I've really evaluated this stuff, and it turns out that X is true. I'm saying that very process would also be determined. You could never escape it.
I think you might have lost me on that one. I apologize.
Okay. If reality is deterministic, including your thinking,
yes,
and everything's machinery,
correct,
then everything's determined.
Okay.
If everything's determined, then the moment of coming to knowledge about everything being determined would also be determined. So you couldn't know if it was true.
Why? I don't. I feel like I tracked everything until the very end, and I don't think you demonstrated that. I don't think you demonstrated that.
Give it back to me what I said, though. I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying.
So I fully understood that like, yeah, everything, like, let's exist in my world right now, where everything is determined, input, output. I don't know why you're saying that knowledge can never be attained, or that we can never come to a realization that we are.
What's a realization?
What is a realization?
Wouldn't it just be a determined output of inputs?
Sure.
So then it's not a realization. It's just
Wait,
a
hold-
thing happening.
I don't know why a realization can't be a thing that's happening. I
No,
don't I feel like
no,
you're kind of begging the
no.
question here, and it's
No,
just
no.
like a play of definitions.
No.
But I don't know why.
Okay, so if everything's a mechanism and input output is true,
Okay.
then what methodology is there independent of just happening that you come to the knowledge of anything, including this is just happening? What methodology, aside from just being at the mercy, right, and at the effect? What I'm saying is your view, the thing you're defending, makes thinking and coming to knowledge an effect of a cause that you have no control over. No free will, no operation of mind that makes clear distinctions between things and then chooses coherency. It's just happening. Do you understand? Like, there's no difference than a water coming out of the ground again. It's just,
I feel like you're saying A and B as if they're definitionally contradictory, but I see those as the same thing. I don't know why knowledge can't be something that just exists. I don't know. Like you're saying it can't be knowledge. It's just something that exists. I don't know why those are.
What do you mean exists? Certainly not in nature you find knowledge, right?
Certainly in nature you.
For instance, you know what a circle is?
Do I know what a circle is?
The concept.
The concept, sure.
So when I say circle, Andrew knows what a circle. The guests, the people watching know what a circle is.
Wait, but
that circle.
Do you agree that the circle that a circle is something that's completely arbitrarily created by humans? That does not exist.
But it exists as a concept, right? You know what it is.
Sure, but it's arbitrarily created by us.
That's fine. But the point is,
you have you have no way of. In fact, we could point to so many societies who have no concept of zeros, circles, things that exist outside of nature, negative numbers, imaginary numbers, etc., etc., etc. You could point to so many different cultures who didn't come to this knowledge. So I don't know why. I feel like I have so much proof that this is just sort of arbitrarily created by us, and then we move forward to any. Yeah,
that's not the point. You're looking at particular things. I'm saying those tribes that you're pointing to would have a category of immaterial concepts that they share that aren't found in nature. So even the most reduced
that are arbitrarily created, yes, but I wouldn't call it immaterial. I would say arbitrarily created.
Well, where they're not material though. And they still use them like universal concepts, even among a group of like 50 people. There, even if you said the definition or the symbol for that thing, right, was created arbitrarily, the thing that they're referring to universally, they know what they're referring to, right? But it's not found.
I actually disagree with this. I don't think that if you truly explained what exactly a circle was, especially to someone who hasn't taken algebra before, that they would intuitively get it at all. I think that it's such a foreign concept because we are actually arbitrarily creating something with literal infinite sides that
How about the sun?
I'm lost.
How about the sun? We'll just
What about the sun?
The concept of the sun. If
I don't think that's a concept. I think that's a pretty material.
Well, no, the sun, the concept is not identical to the material sun.
Can you draw the distinction?
So think of a sun.
Okay.
You got it?
Got it.
Did you just think of the sun because you saw it, or you know what the sun is?
I think I'm thinking of my memory of looking at the sun.
Right. But that concept is not found in nature.
The concept of memory
of the sun.
Wait, no. All I'm thinking of is the memory of the sun. That's all I'm doing in my head. And I think memory is pretty easily tangible and material, and I think the sun is pretty easily tangible and material. I could prove those pretty easily.
Not the sun. What we call the sun. I'm saying the reference of a sun, right? The name, the reference of the sun is not identical to the sun, right?
I don't know if I'm following, because when you say think of the sun, I think of my memory of looking up at the sky and seeing the sun. I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, you recall a concept, right?
Sure, but that concept is material. It's a memory.
Now, are you doing that, or if I ask you to do something, are you just at the effect of it, or are you choosing? If I ask you to think of something perverse, do you have the choice to not think of it?
Do I have the choice? I mean, this comes back to it. No, I don't have the free will, but I have to act as if I do.
Acting would assume that free will exists.
Not necessarily.
How do you act I would say, so I reject free will, but a being,
Yes,
is
correct.
going to verb act as if free will exists.
Correct.
That's okay. That's a
I don't know why
contradiction?
I don't know why that's contradictory.
Because you're assuming there's an I that does stuff.
Yes, that's my axiom. It's the Descartes all over again. I have to assume at some point that there is a person who lives, breathes, and exists and thinks. I think, I am. Those are
But you're starting with the conclusion in the first premise.
what conclusion?
I.
No, that's my axiom. Is I.
Okay, so you're okay. You're starting from a circular axiom, right? I.
If you want to call axiom circular, that's fine. I will so bite that bullet. But I would say every system has these had these sort of circular loops once you reach the very the basement of it, like the very root, where you can't go deeper. All of them are going to be circular.
But you said truth is subjective. So how could truth be subjective and yet all systems have this base root axiomatic assumption?
I'm only saying that because I can't think of another system that has another thing. If you could show me a system that has axioms that it can actually be proven outside of those axioms, then I'll take my statement back. Then I'll say, hey, that's not accurate. Actually, the only reason I'm saying that is because I am going off of the knowledge that I have.
Hold on. Why would you ask for proof if truth is subjective?
Why would I ask for proof?
Why would you even need proof?
I feel like you stun-locked me. I'm sorry.
If truth is subjective, why would you have the standard of needing proof for anything?
Sorry.
Change.
One
by
more
the way,
time, I apologize.
If truth is subjective,
yes.
Why would you command or demand, let's say, proof or some methodology for a truthful statement? If, by the way, you also reject that you have the free will to choose a better worldview, but you don't. You reject that there's free will to choose a better worldview.
Wait, no, I 100% agree. Wait, okay, hold on. Just because there's free will, yeah, go ahead.
Is there a you that can choose? Like, let's say someone was like, Staxioms, I've been looking at your worldview and I have this other one, and you're like, let me think about that. While you're thinking about it and determining whether to move over to a more coherent view, are you also rejecting that there's a you actually doing that? And you just act like you're doing that?
Okay. I'm going to grapple with this question as much as I possibly can. I will contend that I don't have a hard background in philosophy, so you are losing me a little bit on some of these subjects, and I want to apologize for that. But if someone asks me for the worldview, saying, hey, here's a better worldview, choose for yourself which one to decide for yourself, and you have the free will to choose between those two objects. I think that it is predetermined based off of how compelling those arguments are, which one I would choose. But I have to I have to decide for myself, because I have to take that axiomatically that I'm existing. I have to move as if there is free will, even if there is none.
You also have to move as if there's such a thing as a better worldview.
Correct. 100%.
So you're saying your worldview is basically, I'm going to take that I exist because I have no choice. I'm going to take that truth is subjective, but I'm going to pretend and act that it is objective. And I'm going to pretend that I'm making choices in the world, but I reject that I actually am.
I will say yes, but I want to caveat that with every system sounds as nonsensical as the one that you were describing right now.
That can't be true based on your view, though. Can you
show me one that's less nonsensical?
No, it's not about that. You would have to reject your view to even ponder that statement. You would have to reject your whole view to even ponder the thing you just said. You just basically said, well, my worldview doesn't account for, like, truth is subjective and we're just operating and blah, blah, blah. And I would actually have to see a worldview that doesn't have all the problems that mine has for me to choose another worldview. You've already rejected your worldview at that point.
No, I don't know.
By considering it.
Let's say deterministically, I've chosen this worldview. Deterministically, once I hear a better argument, I'll opt for that one. I don't know why free will, I don't know why that's self-contradictory. That seems.
Why would you? What do you mean? Why would you choose a better one? Wouldn't some people be determined to choose a worse one? How would you know it was better or worse if there's no you?
I have to rely somewhere axiomatically that I'm going to make logical conclusions and follow some sort of pathway that leads me to a better position.
Right.
And every system is going to have axioms. And that's what I want to keep pushing is I feel like you are saying that you are frustrated with things that cannot be defined within arguments or systems. And I would agree with you, but I would contend that there is no other system that has these sort of self-contradictory, impossible to argue or justify axioms, including faith.
There's views that reject axioms. They don't take brute fact like that.
Can you describe one? Because I'm not familiar with them.
Well, Christianity rejects the axiom. You don't just ad hoc get, oh, I exist, a mind exists, truth exists.
Of course you do. Wait, Christianity absolutely has axioms. It's Jesus is the Son of God. The Bible is the Word of God. How do you know that the Bible is the Word of God? Well, the Bible says it's the Word of God. How do you know that Jesus is the Son of God? Well, that's just something.
Are you saying that your axioms are identical to dogma?
No, I'm saying every system has axioms, and the only reason I am frustrated with Christianity is not because of the circular axioms. It's because that I disagree with the outcomes that it creates.
I'm gonna meet you in the middle and say every worldview has dogma.
Sure, I'll agree with that one too.
Because axioms would just be a dogma, and
if we want to define them as such, and we'll just say those are the same words. I'm okay with that.
So is empiricism is dogma and so forth.
Sure. You know what? I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you.
So my position then, and I think you should explore this, maybe not tonight, is that if we agree that all systems have dogma,
yes,
then my next question for you, and maybe don't answer it tonight, is would it be reasonable to ask you, the person who's pretending that you exist for the sake of doing it,
sure.
Ask yourself, is there a worldview that accounts for dogma?
Is there a worldview that accounts for dogma? I don't know if I understand that question.
So if all views have dogma, wouldn't the next inquiry be which view accounts for dogma itself?
I could say the same exact thing. If we're defining dogma as axioms, which system reflects on axioms? Like what you're doing is you're just swapping a word and saying, "Wow, Christianity really uses the word dogma, doesn't it? Doesn't really use the word axioms." But we're defining them as the same thing. And I could point right back to like a scientific explanation of the world and saying, "Hey, well, scientism or a scientific framework of the world contends with." Axioms and not dogma. Therefore, that worldview seems to be the better.
Well, no, it's not.
All you're doing is, I think it's a trickery of definitions here.
It's not the same because in your view, your axioms don't account for the axioms. They're literally the starting point.
Okay. Do you think dogma is not the starting point of Christianity?
No, there's various dogmas. So God in Revelation would be the starting point. Dogma would come down the line. So, but the axiom...
Maybe I just don't know what the definition dogma is, but I would consider dogma to be God exists. That is a dogmatic...
That's a presupposition. So can we meet even further in the middle that there's no view that doesn't have a presupposition?
Sure. I will 100% agree with that.
Okay.
And
so
I don't... Yeah,
okay, go ahead. No, my question would be the same. If all worldviews have presuppositions because they're unavoidable. You're going to fight with your fellow materialists, by the way, about that one.
I don't think so.
Because they hate that word. They hate the word. Okay?
I think if I called them axioms, then they'll suddenly agree, and I'll be like,
they love it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
But I think the same exact thing about Christians. Every single if I talk to them, oh, how incoherent is your system? Do you rely on axioms? And I would say, wait, hold on. How can you say that Jesus is the Son of God other than Jesus is the Son of God? They would say, yeah, that's kind of something that I can't really defend or justify.
I know.
I could point the exact same finger back at you. And
I get it.
I think that Christianity is slightly more incoherent than my worldview, and there was a reason why I was Christian for such a long time.
Okay, I got to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nothing can be slightly more incoherent than your worldview if your worldview starts with truth is objective.
I disagree.
You can't point out and go, you can't start from truth is subjective, yet there's something called coherency that is basically appealing to objective laws.
But I can point the exact same thing back to you and say, you can't point to something like God and just say there exists God, and exists because I know there's God, and God exists and created
Staxioms,
God.
I don't claim, my starting position isn't that truth is subjective, though.
Your starting position is that God exists, correct?
Well, I would say God is necessary if truth is objective.
What is your presupposition? What is your presupposition?
That God exists.
Gotcha.
God
that's
is
all I'm saying.
I'm
saying that's a similarly ludicrous
let me expand.
statement
No,
that
let me expand.
cannot justify itself.
I can justify it logically if you accept logic.
Okay.
So, but your view
I'll take that
rejects.
presupposition.
Your view must necessarily reject lawful laws of thought, because that would mean that truth isn't subjective. Like, in other words, the law of identity must be maintained and can't be violated. You would have to accept that. So, if I say truth is absolute, you disagreeing would be agreeing with me. Does that make sense?
I want to really push you on how you can define that God exists.
Hold on, I'm getting there.
I know that.
There.
Okay,
you just got to go with me in the
ahead.
dialogue.
Sorry. I just want to make sure
if
that,
I
that we're getting to that.
You have to first understand, or at least grant, even if you try to disagree, which is a self-refuting. If I say truth is objective and absolute, what will you say?
If you say truth is absolute, I would disagree with you.
And disagreeing, if you were right, would assume that truth is absolute.
I don't think that there is a right framework. That's the thing.
Is that right? Is that true?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So if there's no truth, right? You're saying that there's no place to have knowledge or truth.
Not knowledge.
Well, knowledge would
external truth.
Okay, an actual truth that can't be changed.
That cannot be changed. Correct. That is axiomatic and not just axiomatic, can be justified within itself. Like self-reflexively is true. No matter how you stare at it, there is no system that could exist without it.
Okay, so you're saying that truth is not absolute.
Correct.
And you think that's absolutely true?
I think that that's true.
Is it absolutely true?
No, I think it is.
Hold. Gentlemen, there's no great place to stop a debate. But I do have to stop the debate because we have to move over to callers and we have to move over to super chats and all that other great fun stuff. But before we do, I just wanted to let you guys know that Mouthy Infidel and Lavloon will be here next Wednesday doing a debate on trans issues. That's going to be something amazing to behold, I think. And of course, we have Vosh coming back into the arena shortly. And basically, got some great debates coming up. Another one with Jimbob in 2 weeks that I was able to book just recently. He doesn't even know about it, but he's going to be back. I promise. He's not going to want to miss this one either. I'm going to let you guys move into closing statements. Now, Staxioms, you did open first, and I want to give you the benefit of being able to close last. That generally is the most fair way to go about things. Jimbob, I'm going to let you do your closing first. You have 7 minutes on the clock. Go ahead. I'm going to step away for just a minute.
Okay.
Staxioms, please don't interrupt his closing.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Staxioms. You're like a great sport, fun to spar with. It's fun. My position is the same, that, if you're defending a naturalistic, materialistic lens and you start using concepts and you appeal to laws of thought and information, and that you have a mind that's appraising the external world and you can do philosophy, there's a you in there that has some will in the matter, then you're already outside the paradigm. But worse than that, the materialist, naturalist lens turns all things, all of reality, into physical processes. Everything's reduced to a mechanistic, law-abiding machine. And if everything's a law-abiding machine, so is the thing that you call you. That's just the consequence. And if the thing you call you is just at the mercy of law and chemicals and smashing particles and whatnot, then this concept of truth would just be some illusory experience. It would be like the smoke coming out of an engine. It would be identical to matter, and we couldn't know anything. We could have the experience of coming to knowledge. We could have the experience of our concepts, our ideas merging with the external world. But that would also be predetermined, and I think that's the thing that may have not gotten across tonight. for whatever reason. It could be me, it could be him. But the fact of the matter is that if all is material, then all that you call the mind, all appraisal of propositions, everything that's included in our very personal experience of existence is all just determined. And if it's all determined, then if I say opinion A and Staxiom says opinion B and Andrew is deciding on the two opinions, well, Andrew's process is also just determined. So you could never have an independent methodology for coming to knowledge. Now, the other part is knowledge itself existing not only requires something that's outside of mechanisms, aka in the mind. You need a justification for the mind. If you assume the mind exists, then you need a worldview that accounts for such a metaphysical organ that's not identical to just processes. Does it need processes? Yeah. The question is whether it's identical to processes. I reject that it is, because you wouldn't be able to have knowledge. Have we heard examples tonight of things that are not material that my opponent uses? Yes. He's even admitted to some. So he's a good sport there. Now, another problem that came up is he starts from truth is subjective. I mean, if your worldview is truth is subjective, you really have no position to say any other worldview is incoherent, because you've already started from a self-refuting position. That is to say, we can't access truth, but not for the reason I stated, that a strict mechanistic universe would be determined you couldn't access truth. Unless you're J.F. Gariepi and he is a truth-seeking machine, in which case he's the lucky one, right? Other than that, I mean, rejecting having the worldview that truth doesn't exist, but assuming a mind because you have no other choice, but then living a life as if you have free will because also you have no other choice, but also arguing that there might be another worldview out there that's better than yours and you might choose it. All of these things end up being inconsistent because what? Why? They assume that there's a person in there that's independent of the impulses and the chemical reactions they're having that can look upon the world and hear things and change their mind. There's no other position that leads to nihilism quicker than the one my opponent holds, and I don't even think he really believes it. He's too bright-eyed. He's too smiley. He's going to outgrow this, and that's my time.
Okay. Just my turn, yeah? Sorry.
Hang on, I'm sorry. There was something going on with my mic program, but it's all good now. I appreciate that closing statement, Jimbob. Even the very poor J.F. Gariepi impression, which you need to work on. But I mean, you're so good at all the other ones, right? But I just feel like
I don't need to be good at all of them.
You just that's his way of
that's
saying
just your
like
axiom.
He's like, "Fuck you, Andrew, and your axioms." Staxioms, go ahead with your closing statement. You also have 7 minutes on the clock. Go ahead when you're ready.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so first I'll just say, hey, follow me on Staxioms pretty much everywhere, Twitter, TikTok, etc. Thank you.
We'll get to all that shit.
Sorry.
Just go into the closing.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry. Yeah, so knowledge essentially is begging the question. I do think that 2 + 2 = 4 is not always true. Parallel lines sometimes do intersect, and you can have systems that are consistent that take these axioms that we all consider knowledge and truthful to be actually not at all the case. All systems have axioms that are impossible to justify. And I am sorry that we didn't really get to the point where Jimbob could show us how God equals God is a justifiable sentence that is not just a circular reasoning and logical fallacy where like all systems have to have some sort of axioms. And I think that they all sound ridiculous if you look at the basement, at the base layers of everything. I also do reject nihilism. Anyone who thinks that the world is some shitty, awful place to live in. I say that that you can be deterministic. You can think that the world is a series of inputs and outputs and still have a jolly good outlook on life and be happy that we're here. I think that's it.
Thank you so much for that closing statement, Staxioms. We will allow you plenty of time to shout out your social media. I did want to move into callers in the call-in section now. I do appreciate, and can we get a round of applause in chat for Staxiom's first time here? He was extremely good faith. by basically every metric I can possibly conceive of. He was very, very, very good faith.
I agree.
He does need to get a haircut because that Zoomer haircut is just fucking awful. But other than that, he seems like he's a pretty good guy, I must admit. Moving over to our first caller is PF Young. He's been waiting in the background here for a minute. Thank you so much for the call in. Now, before you say a word, I do want to let the audience know, specifically for the purposes of Staxioms, we do things a little bit differently here in the Crucible. After the closing statements are done, we allow not only caller participation, but the moderator can participate in the conversation from there. Normally, we have questions of our own. I don't have that many this time. And I'm just going to kind of move into callers and this type of thing. But I will keep the conversation still pretty much on track. But just understand that it may become a little bit blood sporty, but I only take one caller at a time. There's never an ambush. Go ahead, PF, whenever you're ready. Also, you suck, Paul. Anyway,
thank you. Thank you. Well, first off, Andrew, thank you for retweeting my tweet today. I really appreciate it. I think it's important that average people call out the absolute degeneracy going on the far left. Am I right, Staxioms?
Absolutely.
Hang on, there's something wrong with my earpiece. The bass must be low because you almost sound like a man right now, and I can't even believe that that's possible.
Did you just pull that from your book of jokes?
Oh, sorry about that. No, I was happy to. I was happy to retweet it, Paul. I was happy to retweet it.
I was happy
because it's true. It's true. I'm watching you red pill yourself.
Yes.
On a truth that I've told you for the last year, and I get total credit for it. So anyway,
that's fair. That's fair. Well, I guess, okay. Well, I'm glad Staxioms is against degeneracy on the left. We should all be against
degeneracy.
Oh, I
mean, it's yeah. I mean, I'm going to define it a little differently than you are, I think.
Maybe. You seem like a smart guy and a nice guy. So I think I see a lot of myself in you. Anyway, Jimbob, it's great to see you again. It's been a long time since our last discussion, which I appreciated. I have a question to get some advice from you. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna?
I was gonna ask if you're still washing Jordan Peterson's grundle.
I don't know what a grundle is.
Yeah,
but if you're asking if I'm still a fan of Jordan,
are you
Peterson.
a Peterson ball washer, Paul?
No. I made a video recently saying why I'm no longer a fan of Jordan Peterson.
Oh, nice.
Yes, so I know.
See, I'm responsible for all of this, by the way. I just
you know what?
It. But anyway,
well,
go ahead.
fuck you then.
This speaks to the quality of the discussion that occurs on the Crucible and its ability to change the mind of even someone as low-minded as myself. But anyway, Jimbob, I'm preparing for the penultimate showdown with my arch nemesis, Zen Shapiro. I don't know when it will happen. I don't know where it will happen, but it will happen. And one of us will die, and I'm hoping it's not me. But I'd like to ask, since I think he shares your presuppositional worldview, it seems like the argument you keep coming back to is you think naturalism is incoherent. Whatever naturalism, you think other worldviews other than yours are incoherent because they can't account for knowledge. Is that more or less a summary?
That's
a fair summary.
One way, yeah. I mean, you could go straight to that, but there's probably other reasons.
Okay. Well, Andrew introduced me to phenomenal conservatism, and so now I'm an apologist myself, and I'm taking up the crusade as an Orthodox apologist now. I'm no longer a Jordan Peterson fan. I'm a Orthodox apologist because I think that'll win me points with the Crucible's audience. So why then should one? I guess the question I would ask is why should we care about accounting for knowledge?
Why should you care about accounting for knowledge?
Right. What is an answer to, you say the reason that naturalism is incoherent or the reason that other worldviews are worse than yours is because they can't account for knowledge. And my question is, that seems like a pragmatic condition. Why should I care about accounting for knowledge?
If you have a worldview and someone asks you, what's your worldview? And the only way to be consistent with naturalism is to just make fart sounds. And so now for people who don't have worldviews, right, maybe not complete epistemic nihilists who want to be consistent, we're starting to see them, by the way, in culture, the culture that you're rejecting, by the way.
Yes, the degeneracy.
So we see that, the rejection of truth. Truth is objective. We're creating reality. You can be an elephant, these kind of things.
Right.
So absurdity, I would say if you want to take your pragmatic view, it might not be my view that that it doesn't actually lead to a healthy, loving life with people. So you know, if you reject truth itself, and you don't need to justify a coherent view or live a coherent view, then you can basically kind of, if you wanted to, just operate like an animal, or operate like there are no universals like a man and a woman. There's nothing true about anything.
Is it okay if I jump in?
Go ahead, Staxioms.
I don't know if that's. I don't know. I don't know
I'm
what
teeing
the
you off
rules
here.
are here.
I'm tossing the
No,
ball.
yeah.
Up
Wouldn't you
go.
say that that's a very pragmatic outlook? That you're essentially just saying that because this outlook seems to be pragmatic, that I'm not behaving like an animal. I mean, that you're essentially begging a pragmatic outlook. You're justifying it pragmatically.
Right.
No, I'm specifically referring to Paul's position. Why, in his view, I'm lending.
Well,
it to him.
I think we're taking a similar view, Staxism and I, at least so far. Up
Right.
this
Justify it within your own outlook.
in my view,
knowledge needs to be gained.
I would
accounted
say
for.
that to
Yeah,
know.
sure.
I would say that to know God, to participate in with God, that you wouldn't be able to get there through falsities.
Yeah, but that's a
false doctrines.
pragmatic condition that you just impose on your own worldview.
Pragmatic in how? Sometimes following
In that, I asked you, why is your worldview better, or why is your worldview preferred, or why is your worldview more true, or whatever?
And you're making
said,
an assumption that
knowing
God is good.
No, it might not be preferable for me to seek God. It might hurt.
I don't get it, Andrew. It might not be preferred. Well, right, but hold on. But you just, so I asked you, why is it important to account for knowledge? And you said, well, you don't have to account for knowledge, but then you'd act like an animal, or is more or less what you said.
Well,
correct?
no, I said if you don't have a worldview, right,
Mm-hmm.
and there's worldview
that accounts for knowledge by your definition.
That even appeals to knowledge at all. Not even account for it. The utilization of knowledge itself, right, would be something pragmatic on anyone's view, right?
Including your own. That's my point. It's like you this whole conversation was about how Staxioms or naturalism.
Are you asking for a moral ought?
Hold on, let me make it clear. In some sense, yes, but let me make it clear. Your position was his worldview is insufficient or is bad. I mean, you guys came to a debate, so presumably, Jimbob, you think your worldview is better than his.
We didn't compare worldviews tonight.
Do you think your worldview is better than his?
I think my worldview is coherent.
And does that make it better than his?
It makes it coherent.
But not better.
Well, if you're
you don't even think your own. I don't know if I'm talking to Jimbob the character or Jimbob the man. Do you think your worldview is better than the person that you've just been debating for the past hour and a half?
If better is coherent, yes, but better could mean that's begging the question of what better is. Why would you use the term better? It's just coherent.
Wasn't that the whole point of my argument? Is that
Isn't
the way
the point
that
of
we
a
choose...
debate? Hold on, real quick. Sorry.
Sure,
Isn't the point of a debate to decide whose worldview is better?
No.
Oh, it's not.
It could just
read
be
the
to
title.
decide whose worldview is false.
Read the title of the debate.
It could just be. It could
Sure,
be
but
about almost anything, right?
It's interesting because
title
I
of the
would
debate.
say, wow, interesting because, I understand the debate is called "Is Naturalism Coherent?" But my point is that I guess it's a broader question of like, why should anyone watching care about whether it's coherent or not? If you won't even say that your worldview is better, like maybe his worldview is not coherent, but it sounds like you're willing to concede that it might be better still.
Well, why are you here calling in?
Or
if nobody
because
cares?
Here's why, Andrew. Because these are the presuppositions argument I make fun of, but it is interesting to me, and it is clearly a mainstay in sort of the Christian apologetics. But I have found that the thing that has convinced me more and more, I'm speaking from personal experience, my lived experience, if you will. The thing that has brought me closer and closer, to the degree that I've been brought closer and closer to the fundamental worldviews in terms of Christianity and the nature of God and all that I believe Andrew, by his own accord, would say that I've, at least demonstrated that to some degree. In my opinion, it has been, in spite of all of this presuppositionalism, it has been the goodwill of like Andrew and you, and even in this conversation. And to me, if your goal, this is my goal, this is my pragmatic goal. One of them is push back against the degeneracy on the far left. Certainly the far
Why?
right has its share of degeneracy.
Why?
I don't feel I need. This is my point, Jim. This is my point, Jim.
Why?
You
Why does
right
it
there. You just
matter?
laughed. You just laughed. See, you know full well, right? Did you get that? Did everyone just catch
Why
that?
does it matter?
Are you joking or being serious?
No, I'm serious. I'm doing your argument on you. By the way,
No.
I just wanna
This is my
clarify
question for you. No, don't change it. You just laughed. I said we should push back against degeneracy, and then you said why.
Hmm?
You don't actually believe that. You're not
What?
actually asking me why. We both know why we should push back against degeneracy.
No, you tell me. No, I don't know why from your worldview.
I'm asking. You don't know why from my worldview. It's every time I get close,
Well,
I get this one little thing where I'm
Paul,
like, oh, don't you see? You almost saw for a second the truth, Jimbob. You almost saw
Paul,
why
don't you
the,
think-
the goodwill that you demonstrate is much more convincing than any of these logical arguments, which, as Staxioms,
But
I think
don't
pointed
you-
out,
don't you
it's
think,
really
though-
just semantic. Like it's a presupposition,
What
and
is?
it's an axiom.
But
So you're
Paul,
going to
don't you
answer?
think that the
Redefining.
whole goodwill thing, like the
Mhm.
goodwill thing, that's going to be individual specific? That there's tons of people who are swayed by arguments and things like this, but they're just way smarter than you, and so that's why they're
That's
swayed
true.
that
Well,
way. whereas
everyone is
kind
way
of low
smarter than you,
tier,
so that's
well,
not
like
the
low
criteria
tier
that
rhetoric
matters.
actually works with you, right?
By the way,
True,
Paul,
true.
you had two
and the
different-
common man.
But you had two different things I just wanted to point out.
Sure.
One, the argument for the necessity of God to account for knowledge, among other things like mind, etc., is a different argument than asking why ought we care about knowledge, right? To ask the question assumes knowledge, so it'd be self-refuting. So the only one who wouldn't care about knowledge would never be asking about knowledge ever.
I don't understand how your system doesn't have these same presuppositions or these
What
same
presupposition?
axioms. Like anytime, like, hey, why does knowledge matter? Why does God
Who
exist?
said my view doesn't have a presupposition?
I
thought we
it seems like
agreed.
the reason why you're attacking, or the reason why you're calling my worldview inconsistent, is because it relies on positions that are unjustifiable. And I'm
No,
saying the
that's-
same.
No, that's not why yours is inconsistent.
Okay. Why
Because
is it?
yours is inconsistent because it can't even account for consistency or inconsistency because it starts from the assumption that truth is subjective. So you
No, I think
throw out consistency or inconsistency, it doesn't matter. Truth is subjective, so it doesn't matter. There's no methodology for truth.
So
anyway.
you are saying that your worldview basically exists because truth is objective, and I don't need to prove it. And if anyone's saying that truth is subjective, I can just say truth is definitionally objective. Therefore, I'll just move forward. With my life.
I can do a demonstration right now that truth is objective.
I would love to hear it.
Truth is objective.
I knew it. See, that's what I'm saying. Definitionally, like you're just claiming
No, I'm saying, tell me how it could not be.
truth is subjective. There's my argument.
This gets
Hold
back
on.
into the. It
No,
gets
hold
back
on.
into
This
the.
is-
Hold on. I'm
it's
not
so
done. Yes.
fucking-
It's
No.
semantics.
Hold on a second. You just said you accept axioms because you can't reject them, right? That's why you accept axioms?
I accept axioms because the worldview
no
that they
choice.
lead to, I think, leads to better outcomes.
No.
That's why.
Based
I do.
pragmatism. I agree with that.
No. Some axioms you said in this debate that you accept because you have no choice. You said that word for word.
I don't know. I don't recall that.
You did. You said you have no choice.
I don't want to refute you. but I
That's
don't-
true, though, isn't it? Like this, I'm wearing a black shirt. Don't I have to accept that no matter what?
I'm saying that when I say truth is objective, I'm saying compared to your position that it's subjective. I'm saying if yours is true, mine is true. Because truth is subjective is a truth claim.
No,
You
I'm
understand?
just saying. No, I could. How about this? I think the truth is subjective.
Okay, can
You
I
think-
jump in here real quick? Andrew, you can kick me out too. I know you got other callers. I was going to ask one more question. Okay. Fuck, I already forgot it. Jim, can I just ask you, outside of the context of this debate, this is just a...
Okay, so you can't say I'm going to ask a fucking question and then you forgot. I'm kidding. I'm obviously kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I just- I
This is
couldn't
the
help
goodwill that I'm
myself.
talking about. That brings me closer and closer to the light of God. I see Christ within
I'm a
you.
very forgiving. I'm a very forgiving, benevolent.
I agree. I feel
person.
like
Go
Christ
ahead
had a
with your
good sense of
question.
humor, turning water into wine and shit. You've got Christ in you, that's for sure. What, Jim? This is an honest question. This is not an accusational question, but like, why? What motivates you to come to these debates to argue for the position that you have? What motivates you to do that?
It changes. It depends on the debate. Sometimes I just want to embarrass someone. Sometimes I want to reveal inconsistencies in people's views. I want to chop at the root of someone's view, and ultimately demonstrate that any view that hides even intentionally or unintentionally the knowledge of God, I'm going to attack it and try to and then eventually conform it.
Okay. And okay. Interesting.
Knowledge of Christ.
That's fair. And I guess I would say that, it goes back to,
why are you gay?
No, it's
Right.
interesting
Fighting-
that would ask for the
fighting-
motivations. You just said, I want to.
What?
Well, so like
I
fighting,
feel like you didn't use the correct accent for that, Jimbob.
like,
Why are you gay?
why are you gay?
Why are you gay?
Why are you gay?
Okay, do you have
You
a
are gay.
follow-up?
I guess I guess I'll just
Wait, hang on.
this out.
Staxiom's the only person who hasn't even made an attempt at the "Why are you gay?" with the accent. He hasn't even made the attempt.
Why are you gay?
Yeah,
That's
well,
pretty good.
that
That's
was
good.
really
That's
good.
pretty good.
Hang on, that was really fucking good. Right, that was good.
A true
Anyway,
moment
finish
of-
up, Paul,
of
because we got to
holy
get on to the
Christian
other callers. So
brotherhood. That's
finish
fair.
off your
That's fair.
question.
I guess the argument you put forward has, logical. You could say it's coherent, but again,
I'm
coherency.
trying to get people
Well, hold on,
to
let me
not
make my
sound
point.
like you. I'm
I
trying to
don't
get
believe
more,
that. I don't
more important
believe that.
people to not sound like you.
I don't believe. I think you have the same goal as I have, which is pushing back against the genuine degeneracy and shit on the far.
No,
on the
that's
far
all
left.
Well, why-
cultural Ben Shapiro bullshit. You're
Okay,
gonna fight the
well,
degeneracy with me?
it's-
But then
I'm so
why
glad
do
you're
you
on my
want?
team.
Why do you care?
No,
if
that's
people sound
Staxioms.
that way?
I'm so glad you're on my team. Fighting the cultural wars. No, it's your unity. It's your participation in Christ. It's
All right,
it's
all right.
different
I
than
think-
cultural wars.
Look,
You
I
might
think,
look. We might lose a cultural war, but there's still a life to live.
Sure, agreed. Yeah.
So what's
yeah,
that life
definitely.
if it's not a cultural war for you?
What is?
Yeah. Let's say you're going to lose the cultural war. The degeneracy is going to increase.
Well, I
it's gonna get
think-
worse and worse. How do you live now?
This is incredible. How it got turned around on me so quickly. God, this
That's
is
right.
Jimbob. You are. I know. This is.
True.
I'll just say this. There was a moment about 40 or maybe a minute or two into when we were talking, and when I feel like I almost got you on something where I asked you,
Now we're getting close.
I feel like it was though, and maybe it's my phenomenal conservatism bleeding through here that Andrew has shown me the light. Blessed be thy name of phenomenal conservatism, Andreato San Patriarchos. We will get you there, Jimbob.
Dude,
because
you're a
Staxionism,
utilitarian.
The closer you are, no, I'm a phenomenal conservative. I am now an apologist. You can't use
could
those
never,
words against
You
me.
could never get someone
leveled
if
up.
you're a pragmatist or a utilitarian. It's all arbitrary.
Andrew,
All right,
I would.
Paul,
yes,
Paul,
thank you.
You
Thank
got to
you.
move on. But before you go, hang on. Before you go,
Yeah.
Why don't you shout out your Twitter and shout your channel out real quick?
PF
Because Paul
Young.
has made he's made actually some really good videos, especially recently, and I've actually enjoyed watching them quite a bit. That's what he was saying when he said I retweeted him. He's kind of on the front lines of a part of a war that I've been a part of long before it was popular. So appreciate that very much. I strongly suggest you go check those videos out. They really are quite good.
Yes, I appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Yes.
Go ahead. Finish up.
Well, I was going to say, I definitely want to see a debate on phenomenal conservatism. I don't need to participate in it, but if you can get genuine,
I'll debate with you on it.
Okay.
I promise.
All right. Fair enough. All right.
Unless you want someone else.
Well, I would say Zen, but that's just not even fun for me. So we'll have that execution
All right.
publicly at some point. But thanks.
It
everyone.
sounds good, brother. Have a good day. Okay. Sorry, guys, in the background, and I do see you there, Mendoza. Just hang tight for me. We will get to you. Machine Lies, you've been waiting patiently in the background. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, what's going on? Can everybody hear me?
We
Too
can.
much.
Your mic
Can
is
I-
so
can I say-
freaking loud. It's so loud, man. Hang on.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe I can adjust it. Hang on.
Yeah. Perhaps the showrunners can make some adjustments here, and we'll
One
get it
second.
popping.
1 second. Okay. Give me a test 1, 2.
Test 1, 2.
Give me another test 1, 2.
Test 1, 2, 3.
There we go. Go ahead, man.
All right. Yeah. So I guess my question goes in no direction in particular, but I was gonna debate the proposition about AI computers. So related to that, I did hear Jimbob mention something in regards to that, and also mention in regards to philosophy of mind. So that's kind of the direction that my question is gonna go in, and I'm not gonna take that much time. You know what I mean? Basically, it's a threefold question, addressed to each side, and the question is essentially, first of all, how do you account for consciousness or mind? Do you attribute it to brute emergence from physical substrates or something like that, or physical
Hang on,
concomitant?
stop the machine lies. Do one question at a time. So if we're going to start with how do you, what do you call the mind, or what do you attribute to the mind? Let's start with that. I'm not saying, depending on how long this goes, we can get to your other questions, but let's start with that so that these guys can actually give a coherent response. Jimbob, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would reject that sort of like physical take of what the mind is. So to me, the mind with heart is basically a conjoined metaphysical organ, if you will, that discerns truth, doesn't create truth, discerns truth, and basically accesses the immaterial plane that we can't reduce to physicality.
I think my main contention with asking how consciousness exists is kind of non-falsifiable, because if consciousness didn't exist, then we wouldn't be able to be around speaking about it, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like kind of like a nonsensical question. Like it's reflexive, if that makes sense.
Not really.
Fair.
Okay. Part two of the question.
Sometimes I'm a little bit up my own ass.
Yeah, perhaps, man. I mean, no one's perfect,
Sometimes the machine lies is up his own fucking ass, so don't feel bad. Go ahead, machine lies, with your second question.
Yeah. Well, I'm flying by the by my own pants seams. You know what I'm saying? I got the flying carpet. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, the second part of my question is if okay, so how do you account for the arising of consciousness from dead matter?
That's a question for Staxioms.
Wait, why dead matter?
Inorganic matter versus organic matter.
Like, how did carbon exist?
Well,
how did
asking,
carbon get created from like the fusion of hydrogen?
No, he's asking a different question.
Is consciousness the same as carbon?
Yeah. No, but you said organic, which just means carbon-based like organisms.
Life, non-life to life. I think what he's asking. Is that what you're asking, machine lies? Inorganic to organic? How does consciousness...
But like inorganic and organic definitionally just means carbon-based organisms. That's all that we're referring to. And if we want to talk about like materially...
I didn't say anything about life. I'm saying, how do you...
You said organic, did you not?
No. Okay, you're a thinking person, right? You're a thinking person, right?
Yep.
How are you a thinking person?
I think that we needed to develop this idea we needed to develop thinking and constructing in order to create tools so that we could evolve past, classic Darwinism.
So you think that consciousness developed as we were constructing tools?
Correct.
He also asked how, not why, if it was needed. How did it
happen? Through the theory of evolution. Do you want me to go through like Darwinism?
So you don't think So do you think that only human beings are conscious?
It really depends on how we define conscious, but more than likely, yeah.
Well, human beings are not the only ones that make tools. Like birds make nests, beavers make dams, so.
Why did we develop philosophy? If it doesn't give us...
develop? Yeah, I think that there's a lot of utility of philosophy. I think that it helps really give you a strong outlook on logic and the world and ways to construct puzzles and like to think and create tools in more comprehensive ways than beavers or birds can at all.
What if your philosophy rejects the utility approach that you have, like mine does? What's the use of me rejecting your tool-based philosophy system?
What's the use of you having your own construct? Like, I don't know if I'm fully following. I'm sorry.
If philosophy was developed along with your emergent mind evolutionary theory for the use of tools to construct things, if I reject that that's my philosophy, rejects that notion.
Where
why
does
d-
the utility come from?
Yeah, why
I
did
think that
mine
there's a
develop-
ton of utility that religion comes from. Mostly community.
No,
I think that
no, I didn't say that religion. I said rejecting utility.
Sure, but I think this philosophy stems from religion, and I think that not only would I say that I think you would agree with that because you said that your axiom was that God is God, and that's something that just sort of relies at the framework of your philosophy. And I think that most Christians or most people who are generally religious or believe in some metaphysical God would agree with this philosophy. So I think that religion has itself baked in a lot of utility where like community comes along and they have to ad hoc justify themselves through the theories that you're presenting.
But that's a genetic fallacy. You're assuming people believe what they believe. First, your view is people don't choose what they believe. It's just a mechanism from evolution.
Sure.
2, because they don't choose it. And so if they don't choose it, then pragmatism's out the window. So it's gone.
And then-
You lost
and
me.
then-
Why
and
is
then your
pragmatism out the
definition-
window?
Because that's arbitrary
your
goals that
definition
are
of
chosen.
religion,
Of course, they're arbitrary goals. I agree.
That are
with
chosen.
and then your
Should- like-
definition of religion would be no different than your definition of science,
Right.
because you're just saying it's just based on pragmatic
Mhm.
use of tools in nature and
Yeah, but I feel like I've already conceded that the basic framework of religion and science could be like axiomatically correct, but I disagree with the outlook that religion gives, and I agree way more with the outlook that science gives.
But you were determined to think that, right?
Sure.
Okay. So we were
Okay.
determined to think this. How could you disagree with the outlook if it's determined?
Because I'm gonna contend with the different outcomes. I like
What do
yeah,
you
like
mean?
if you're saying we're just kind of like lost in space, like kind of
No.
just like arguing with each other,
What-
I kind of agree with you.
No, how could you contend if there's no you contending? It's just a machine.
Because
doing it.
that's I feel like I've been over this. That's my axiom. I am.
But you're not.
I am.
But you're not. You're a machine. That's your axiom. Is you're a machine.
No, yeah, but but you just said it. I am a machine.
Your
What was the first
axiom
two
is
words?
actually
I am.
No, your axiom isn't the Descartes. It's actually I do, therefore I'm a machine. That's what it really is.
I disagree.
Not I think, therefore I choose different directions and what to believe. Right.
Well, guys, let's move forward to the Machine Lie's last question so that we can get to the other callers. Mendoza's been waiting patiently. We see him back there in OG Snoop. So go ahead, Machine Lies, with your last question.
It actually follows naturally in the discussion, and that would be if there's no difference between physical combinations of things and minds, then if you create an AI system, how would you know that it's thinking? Because it would just be based on physical combinations, just like how you believe consciousness is.
Jesus, I saw that. I would.
Would you let Big Bear in the chat? What was that?
Based actually, legitimately, one of the only things that separates from us and the machines is our libido. That's a hardcore belief that I have. Anyway, moving forward.
So the machine has to be a machine that's sexual instead of conscious. I don't.
No, I think that's a drive that we alone have. That's like. Anyway, sorry. Your question was. I got super distracted. Repeat what your question was. Let's get back to the subject at hand.
My question is, if consciousness just boils down to the physical, then how would you be able to distinguish a thinking machine from a thinking human? Which you said, yeah, which you actually said that consciousness is discovered in nature through the use of tools. So if we
no, hold on. I think what I'll generally say is that consciousness, how we describe it, probably exists somewhere along a spectrum. Because I think we would probably contend that some people in like vegetative states and some humans legitimately probably are not conscious, are not aware enough of themselves. True facts, based and red pilled. Am I right, boys?
Well, I guess a better question for you would, if you assume things like rights, which we didn't even get into, or some sort of human dignity, right? You do behave as if that's true, right? Even if you reject it. Okay.
Yes.
So I think a better way to reframe his question is, would you assign those to machines if there was no delineation in your worldview between?
I don't think I have a delineation, but I definitely have a spectrum. that
Would
like
can a house have rights eventually in your worldview?
can a house have rights?
A smart house, a thinking house that up to your standard is sentient and conscious. Would you give it rights?
What type of rights?
Just like you have
Like
to
property
ask
rights,
it. You have
or-
to ask it, yeah, to change the light bulb. You have to ask it, or else it's molestation.
I think that it would have to be pretty far, very, 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 very deeply advanced. So much so, way more. I would have to see proof that the AI is not just basically like a Google search fill-in, which
All
is like a
Guys,
comprehensive Google
we're
search
getting into
fill-in.
like Black Mirror territory
Facts.
at this point. Okay, so
I'll
we're gonna
say
move
yeah.
on.
I always go to house rights.
20,000
Yeah,
years
we're
in the
gonna move
future.
on from here. The machine lies. I've been talking with him. I know that we have an AI technology debate coming up that he most definitely is going to be a part of. We always appreciate his input, even though I don't know why the fuck he's always got the sunglasses and the weird hair. But you know what? He's our fucking crazy motherfucker, right?
TV
So
blaring in
machine
the
lies.
back.
Why don't you take a second though before you go? Because I know you're working on your channel to shout it out. He has some pretty good videos over there, especially about technology. Go ahead.
Yeah, my channel is called The Machine Lies, and Staxioms, it's nice to meet you. And
Appreciate it, man.
And Jimbob, I appreciate the recent topics on your show covering science and technology, the
Awesome.
hoaxes in terms of science and technology.
Nice.
And I
thanks.
cover a lot of the same material on my channel.
Cool.
So you guys go check it out and have a blessed night, everyone.
See
You too, man. Take good care of yourself. Have a good one. Mendoza, you've been waiting very patiently in the background. Thank you so much for doing that. Go ahead with your questions.
What's going on, fellas? It's a nice, entertaining debate going on. JB's been gracious, and Staxioms, I think, has been arguing in good faith, at least, although incoherently, but in good faith. So, good job, guys. It was funny because as he's Staxiom is saying, "I am a machine," and then this guy's username is The Machine Lies, and then it's just a little irony there, because the whole time Jimbob's been, trying to get you to see that even if you disagree with him, you don't have a standard from which to objectively base your claim on, because
Yeah, no, I know that.
he is as much the same process of evolution of matter in motion as you are.
Correct.
And so would you at least concede that this is from your if you're consistent with your worldview, you'd say that this is pointless, this is meaningless in the grand scheme of things.
I fully disagree with it. I fully disagree with this.
Okay, why ought we pursue the truth?
Well, I'm gonna get real pretentious here and just like
okay, so let me try and simplify.
I think Camus was right that like legitimately
Now,
meaning is found in struggle.
Just real quick, I'm sorry to step into Staxioms, but caller,
yeah.
make sure if you are asking him a question,
Okay.
give him plenty of time to respond. Okay, go ahead, Staxioms.
Oh yeah, so I think meaning is found in continuing along in this universe, not knowing where our place is in it. Like, it's Sisyphus rolling that rock up the boulder. The struggle towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That stuff is fantastic. I love that shit. I eat it up. I think that is the correct way to look at the universe, is that we're kind of floating along aimlessly, but we can find meaning within ourselves. We can find meaning within our community and the ways that we interact. And I think that like it's all self created, but I think that kind of makes it more beautiful, if that makes sense.
You're a scientific materialist, right? Like
I would probably, yeah.
You're how you derive knowledge is through the scientific method, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did we create the laws of physics? The regular
Yes, 100%.
we created them.
Yes, 100%.
You wouldn't say that we discovered them. That we create math. We create.
If you like legitimately, if we talk about like Newton and Einstein and the fact that they are legitimately like they cannot work with each other. They are self-contradictory, because any law that we're trying to discover about the universe, they are merely descriptions to describe the outcomes that we are seeing, and they are constantly being self-corrected at any point. And these things that we consider true, like force equals mass times acceleration, all of these Newtonian ideas of physics, all of these Euclidean ideas of algebra, they break down in a lot of different systems because they are self-created, 100%.
Yeah, but you're pointing to a small subset to represent something.
Not the descriptions. Mendoza's talking about the behaviors themselves. So, like, let's say the law, like hot to cold, is a law.
What,
We
like
observe that,
thermodynamics
right?
is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, thermodynamics. So
Right.
gas, high pressure to low pressure. These are what you're saying. I agree with Staxioms that we created a way in which to describe them mathematically and using words, right? But
Yes.
what's actually happening, we didn't create that heat goes from hot to cold. We observe it and then describe it, right?
But everything that you were saying, all of these categories that we're creating are created. When we're saying heat, we're deciding to call something the transfer of energy from one molecule to another. Everything here is self-described. Everything here is self-created.
Yeah, and make sure both you guys remember too that we are trying to focus on the caller's time. I understand
Sure,
there's
yeah.
going to be back and forth, and I think that that's totally okay.
Sure.
But let's try to be mindful that the caller took their time. Go ahead, Mendoza.
So Staxioms, from your worldview, there really is no wrong or right, right? From a
No.
moral sense.
Well, I will kind of agree. I'll say that there is a. I'm gonna sink my ship here and say, you know what? I am a little bit of a utilitarian here. I know Andrew's just gonna scoff at it. I'm sure the other people will too. But I did. Well, come on, I haven't heard you talk shit about utilitarians before. I think that we can talk about utility.
Faces, but only to your faces.
That's true.
Right?
True. I think that we could describe it in terms of utility and say, hey, Newton is super, super great and effective at describing the laws of nature when we look at a ball kicked by a foot, and we still use it in college courses, even though we know it is false, even though we know that on a molecular level. That's why we're looking for this theory of everything, because right now, all of our ideas and laws of physics are completely contradictory. They don't work within each other. And
because you're trying to arrive at something that you're seeking a metaphysical transcendent objective reality through a material lens, and you're never going to find it. And I think you are being consistent with your worldview, to give you credit. You are being consistent with your worldview by saying things that are, contradictions can exist and this and that, but this is the natural consequence of a materialistic paradigm, that you can't assert anything 100% positively, even if it's 99.9%.
Correct.
Still a little bit room for doubt.
But I think that's so beautiful. I think that's so important to have that room of doubt. I think that it's important to not be sure at any point and to constantly second question yourself. And while you move through the world, you have to rearrange your worldview as you come across new theories. And you can't just take Newton at his word, because as soon as we start looking at electrons, we're like, oh shit, our entire idea of how matter works is completely incorrect.
Yeah, but if its determinism is true, there is no you rejecting anything. That's the point.
No, we don't reject Newtonianism. We recognize it's false and use it anyway.
No, recognizing anything, the whole point is the process that Mendoza is actually pointing to is not just how you ascertain knowledge. The methodology is non-existent. It's that even this concept of, well, that's why it's so important and beautiful. We can go out in the world and see and measure things and change our views. This assumes there's a you that willfully can do this.
I agree. You keep coming back to this. Like, that's not an axiomatic statement of me.
So it's just determined. There is no you really doing
Okay,
that. So,
someone doesn't know anything about physics. You ask anyone about the contradictory of Newton and
Never
Einstein.
pay any attention to chat.
That's the
Chat
facts.
doesn't even exist.
That's the fucking dumbest shit I've ever seen in
doesn't
my
even
entire life.
exist. You
That
never
comment.
pay
Sorry,
any attention to
Gordzilla.
chat.
I apologize. I won't let.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, in the you know, I play off them sometimes, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
always during the Q&A, I try to like put them up on screen so that you guys understand what they're thinking. But you don't ever need to pay attention to chat, even though Godzilla is 100% correct and fucking based in every way. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Obviously, I'm kidding. Mendoza, did you have anything you wanted to close on real quick before I move on to the next caller?
Yeah, last one. Yeah. Once again, Staxioms, you're a good sport. I think that ultimately your worldview ends in just absurdity and insanity, not as a personal attack, but it just ends in chaos and the impossibility of knowledge.
No,
we can make claims like that because we do have an objective standard that is eternal and unchanging and permanent and everlasting, and that is the mind of a transcendent creator that also happens to incarnate into the world and show us the way back to the Father. So,
It's awesome that you said that. Actually, do you know what Camus' philosophy was called?
who's
Camus, the one, the Sisyphus, the one I was referring to recently, it's called absurdism. That's what it's like, legitimately, like, yeah, this is
Yes.
we can.
If I punch you in the face right now, you'd just be like, "Oh, that's just predetermined." So you can't do anything about it.
I don't think I would say that. No.
You can't make any. You can't be.
So you can't behave that way. You can't behave consistent with absurdism.
So you don't. You're consistent with your ideologies, but in the way you live, you're inconsistent. You're actually more consistent with a Christian than an actual materialist, because you do believe that you should behave a certain way.
But I think
So
everyone would.
That's all I
acknowledge that
have
there are
to
some
say. Great
presuppositions.
job, guys. Much
Yeah.
love. Keep it up.
See you, Mendoza.
Love.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
have a good night, Mendoza. I won't even hold it against you that your name is Mendoza, which is, you could have made it anything and you made it fucking Mendoza. But okay, fine. I mean, fair enough. Moving on. Last caller before we get into super chats. And again, thank you guys so much. And remember, these debaters took a lot of time out of their evening to come on and do this. And again, even though Staxioms, this is his first time to the Crucible, I'd say he's equipped himself pretty well and handled himself pretty well. And he's been very good faith. OG Snoop, you've been waiting extremely patiently. And I always, you always have kind of these shorter calls. I wanted to give you a little bit of additional time to get your questions in. Go ahead, man.
Howdy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sweet. Staxium,
Yes.
you're very left side of the brain driven, numbers driven type of person.
Sure.
Because you did a lot of study in math and whatnotness.
A little bit. Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm getting into this is, your very essence in the way you present yourself and how you've engaged in this conversation has been very numbers driven. One event equals another event. The 1 + 1 equals the 2. Where I don't think the actual rudimentary aspects to philosophical discussion. Are you aware of the cave allegory?
Are you doing a bit? Yeah, of course I know the cave allegory.
So the cave allegory, that
Yeah,
there's-
Plato, where you look at the cave and the shadows. Oh my gosh, what's a shadow? And then he walks outside, and then they kill the guy because he's
But do you know what that means? And it was
It's-
Socrates, not Plato.
Are you sure?
100%.
Okay, I always heard it as Plato's allegory is how I always heard it.
Welcome to the shadows being presented to you.
True. What I always get out of that allegory is that people generally, when approached with, one, that we are constantly not sure about what knowledge can be understood. And generally speaking, when given a new source, we usually reject it because we shirk at any sort of break to our paradigm.
Yeah, you're skeptical of it. It's skepticism. One of
Yeah,
the key tenets
sure.
of Platoism.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was Socrates.
Well, Platoism. It was a key tenet in Platoism presented by Acrosilus. So where I'm getting is Jimbob has been presenting perfectly to you
The name
how
is
you're not
Rim Job.
Also, I 100% looked it up. It's 100% Plato. I feel like this is just a
Don't
bit.
interrupt the fucking caller, Jim
I
Job.
It's my gym job.
So where I'm getting at with is he's presenting you these concepts and these theories that you're saying aren't true because I have this materialism, this technology, this other education that we've received.
No, I disagree with your analysis of my point. I'm saying that I think that his is a coherent position that I don't think leads to good outcomes. Because I'm a utilitarian.
You don't think all of
I-
Western civilization led to a good outcome? You think it's all
No,
bad?
I don't think that all of Western. I don't think that all of Western philosophy. I think that
Civilization.
Right. I think that if you want to contend with Western civilization, you kind of have to look pretty extensively at the Enlightenment, which was kind of a rejection of a lot of those notions.
No. The success of Western civilization started in the 18th century.
Hang on,
with
I'm
the
sorry.
beginning-
Cut in. I have to cut in real quick.
Sure.
You need to time this guy out immediately, just for saying this comment. Anybody who loves wasps deserves to be timed out for at least 5 minutes. They're ontologically evil in every conceivable way. He's timed the fuck out. Go ahead, gentlemen.
I'm sometimes trying to figure out your specific brand of conservatism where you don't like wasps. Is this a bit? I can't tell sometimes.
I think he feels offended.
I might
But what
just
I'm
be
saying
an
is,
idiot.
was that like a really terrible joke?
Just-
I think that was a really terrible. I think you tried to make a funny and you failed. That's what I think just happened. Just saying. Anyway, go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
I'm just saying you're presented all these concepts that you believe are true, saying you came in starting on the platform, hey, I'm a leftist, I'm left wing, I believe in all these things. Where Jimbob's asking you, where do these beliefs originate?
They don't
that was
originate
the
from
foundation
anywhere.
for skepticism.
They don't originate from anywhere.
You just they don't think there's any existence to it.
No, there's no material existed. That's I like there is no real position, and that we are basically making things up as we go. And I am saying I get the most utility out of this.
So the Roman Empire just decided all of one day, you know what? It's most utility value for us to become Christian. Not that they had an understanding of it and where they derived their solution to it and be like, wow, this is how we get closer to the God.
No, I think a lot of
from Plutarch.
I think a lot of the decisions that specifically the Roman Empire and a lot of the core tenets of Christianity were kind of like arbitrarily chosen. Specifically, if we look at what was the 400 AD where they basically it's like it was like the 90. Fuck, it's been so long since I've been.
If the Romans just saw the value, the axiom of mos morium.
No, but the idea that like
being the way of the ancestors.
Hold on.
Why would they portray the way of their ancestors for Christianity?
Hold on. Where did the 1 second. I'm so sorry. Like the Trinity specifically, like that was an idea that was kind of created in like 400, 500 AD to kind of like facilitate the Catholic Church. And if you look at like the beliefs of like Christians from like 0 to 400 AD,
wow, people learned.
Sorry,
people learned and advanced.
No, I think it's a
what about the concept of the one from Plutarch? That was in 150 BC. I don't
know what the one is.
The one is the concept of the one of all know being, the one who knows everything, all of logic, all of truth.
Like an omnipotent, all-knowing.
Yeah.
Omniscient.
That was a concept from Plutarch in around 150 BC. Okay. Not BC, 80.
All right, listen, we're getting into something that would require far more time than we have time to get into. OG Snoop, did you have something you wanted to wrap up on, a specific question or something like that you wanted to put to Staxioms or Jimbob?
Most certainly. Staxiom, I think you need to start looking at more of a skeptical view rather than saying, oh, I'm inherently leftist because that's just what I know. Be more skeptical about different things. A good place to start is a man called Yuri Bezmenov. He was a KGB defector to the United States. Image right here. You can check out his interview.
Okay.
And that's it.
I feel like I'm pretty skeptical, but okay.
Thank you so much for the call in, OG Snoop. Have yourself a fantastic and wonderful evening. Now, we got to move on to the super chats, guys. You've been here just over 2 hours, almost 2 hours, 15 minutes. We're going to move into those and give you guys a chance to answer. Now, it's perfectly fine if you guys want to take issue with each other's answers during the super chats. We're just fine with that. Let me go back to the beginning. $50 comes in from Anonymous. Thank you so much. Huge donation. Says Frank Stallone was singing about flanneled men from New York, not a hair lip from PA. By the way, why you guys might not understand the reference, I do, which makes it 10 times more hilarious because you don't. But I am going to kind of point out one ultimate irony as I move through these super chats, which is that my favorite metal band is a band called Wasp. But in reality, the fucking creature that I want to just be like all of their souls devoured if they had them, which they don't, and they should just be massacred worldwide, are all wasps. All insects that are what they should just be eliminated, period. Just saying. Just my 2 cents. You can
Jesus
take issue with it. Come on, Staxioms. Who likes wasps? Nobody.
All right.
But I mean, you don't think they're ontologically evil?
Utilitarian. Andrew's being a utilitarian.
I feel like, you know what? I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm trying to. I'm gonna sit this one out.
I say we
No,
get rid
bees
of
are fine.
whales.
Bees are fine. It's just the
Mhm.
wasps. The wasps have to go.
I
Okay,
think
and mosquitoes.
whales creep me out.
What about mosquitoes? We can all agree mosquitoes got to go.
Sure. I will say that mosquitoes gotta go.
You see, it's just one step to the wasp, and I'll have you. Anyway, $5 comes in from Well Emmanuel. He says, Staxioms,
Uh-huh.
are you familiar with relativism? Do you agree that it should be avoided if possible? I think you need to have an absolute standard for truth, accessible by revelation, as opposed to being discovered. Otherwise, you fall into relativism. If you need me to repeat that, let me know.
I'm not too. So, do you want me to respond? I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not like, again, I don't have a hard background in philosophy. A lot of it's just kind of winging it as I just kind of read a lot. I'm not too familiar with relativism. From what I can look at, it seems fine. I don't know why it's necessarily inconsistent. We can have a debate on relativism later, but yeah, I might be a relativist. Sure.
Okay. I think what he's getting at, just to kind of break it down,
Sure.
what he's saying, he says, I think you have to have an absolute standard for truth that's acceptable by revelation as opposed to being discovered. What he's saying there is like some of these laws that you're talking about, like the laws of logic, they're not made up, they're discovered, or mathematical principles aren't made up, they're discovered. I think that's what his argument is.
I don't know why that's inconsistent though.
Well, I don't know if it's
I'm
inconsistent.
responding to the super chat. I don't know why that's inconsistent. I feel like I've been trying to demonstrate that that's as consistent as any other position.
It's inconsistent because if relativism is true or something you can consider, then you have to reject the absolute objective state of the laws of logic, the law of identity, so you can't.
I'm gonna defer to math and science again, and I'm gonna say, hey,
That's
a lot
logic.
of laws and a lot of a lot of laws and a lot of theories that we use, they're kind of demonstrably false and they're not really ubiquitous, and we kind of just use them anyway because they provide a lot of utility.
That's the
Specifically,
that's
I'm
the
looking
opposite
at
of relativism, though, right?
Newtonian.
But that would be the opposite of relativism.
Why?
Relativism.
I'm saying
because you
as
just
far as
said
I'm aware, relativism, it means that there's no absolute truth, right? Correct. That like we're basically we're not discovering something, we're inventing them. That's what relativism
I know,
believes.
but do you see any problem with the statement there is no absolute truth?
No, I believe there's no absolute truth. Do I resolve that for you?
You believe there's no absolute truth.
Correct.
So you believe that you have beliefs.
Yes, because I think therefore I am. That's the foundational axiom that I believe in. That I stand on that ground. That I exist, I have beliefs, I have thoughts, I move, etc. And then everything that I ascertain from that comes from those axioms.
Paid zero attention to me either, right? I'm just engaging with the chat.
Sure.
Anyway, guys, let me move on to the next super chat. This one's for $3.99. It comes in from Kevin B, who says, not an expert. I can tell this kid is genuinely curious about learning the truth. Most guys his age are controlled by ego. Respect to Staxioms.
Well, I appreciate it. I will say I grew up very religious. Someone said Staxioms is a was with a little parentheses there. I grew up a wasm, white Anglo-Saxon Mormon. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I grew up really wide-eyed, interested in religion, and I think I disagreed with a lot.
Is this true? You're being accused of your mother making a fine casserole.
She does make a pretty damn good casserole.
My wife doesn't make casseroles because I'm too busy just like, eating meat and potatoes as my heritage would indicate. Moving on from this super chat to the next one. $3.99 comes in from Apptown1, longtime Crucible supporter. No message entered by user. My favorite kind of super chat, the kind where you support the channel and you don't even say anything. Another huge $50 super chat comes in from Anonymous. And he says, "My truth axiom graph says service my truth." I don't know if you want to respond to that. It was a hefty super chat. I think you should. To repeat it, he says, "My truth axiom graph says services my truth."
I fucking love this country where you can donate $50 and that kind of nonsense just gets spouted onto a channel. It's kind of beautiful.
Well, let's just make sure that so you can read it if you want to.
My truth axiom graph says services my truth. I agree. I agree, buddy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Total agreement. Thank you for the huge dono in support of the channel. $5 comes in from Wicked Wally. He says, "How do you tear apart philosophy in Hyrule?" And then he says, "Triforce."
Nice.
What the fuck? He just
Who's
like, you know what?
Who's excited for Tears of the
I don't
Kingdom,
even
am I
care if
right?
he's a fucking mod, dude. So you got to time him out just for that. It's terrible. It's one of the worst dad jokes Wicked Wally's ever had. And you knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. $5 comes in from Jack Gallant. And he says, "I like Stax. Good faith and earnest. Jimbob. Fuck yeah. Keep it up."
Yeah. Thanks, Jack.
Fuck
Appreciate
yeah. Okay, $5 comes in from OG Snoop. He says, "Oh my God, this guy, I can't even read it. He said something about his anus and Staxioms. I can't even get into it, right? That's not even his super chat, but I, because I actually read things before I say them, unlike some hosts, they can't get me that way. $11 comes in from Moldy Apple. And Moldy Apple says, "Mr. Stax, I hope you feel free to come by Jimbob's stream anytime. This would be fun to see progress over time." Actually, that's a good point. Jimbob does stream, I believe, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays now, right, Jimbob?
Yes. Yeah, you'd have a blast, Staxioms. You can also handle it. Some people can't handle it, but we open to panels, so it wouldn't be just us. And we get into all sorts of topics. By the way, it wouldn't just all go to worldviews. We talk about technology, the implications of AI and this kind of stuff. So it's
I appreciate that.
It's quite the fun.
And then moving on from here for $4.33, Mud says, "So your hatred of Christianity is just a mechanistic result. So there is no justification, just a thing that happened."
Yeah, I think that's kind of funny. Actually, my mom's really bitter that I've kind of left the church, and she every time that I go over to my family,
what church, by the way?
Mormon church. Sorry.
Wait, you were a Mormon?
You made the right
I feel
choice.
like I've said that a few times. Yeah.
You're fucking awesome, dude. I'm
You
so
did the
happy
right
that you
thing.
left. Yeah.
Anyway, anytime I come over to my mom, she always says like, "Look, he's not an atheist. He's just angry," and I think that's so funny. I disagree, but I think that's fine.
Have you seen that whole Netflix documentary that they just made on the Mormon church?
Yeah, Under the Banner of Heaven. Is that what you're referring to, or a different documentary?
It's really good.
Yeah, that shit was crazy.
It's like
However,
7 parts.
However,
yeah.
Staxioms,
Andrew Garfield, right?
pragmatically, economically, Mormons do have quite the geographic and organized stronghold. So you might want to reconsider if you're going to continue utility. It might lead you right back into Mormonism.
Wait, it would lead me back into Mormonism because Utah has like a political stronghold?
Well,
Is what you're
no,
saying?
because Mormonism itself has a deep stronghold in some factors that you might, so if
like
you're looking at it
community
from
is
like
what
a
you're saying,
network,
like it has a strong community.
but it goes deep, and it goes economically deep and geographically deep. And so if there was ever a time you needed a community, you might be running home to mommy. No offense, like you might actually be a part of the community.
I think I can find a beautiful community outside of the church. I think there are beautiful communities in there too. I'm not super bitter about a lot of religions. I think there's a lot of really strong positives that we need to contend with, including community, including family, including a lot of helpful charity that a lot of churches give. So no, I'm not bitter about religion in general.
You don't seem actually hateful at all
Staxioms
to me.
was Joseph Smith a grifter?
A little bit, yeah.
Like a lot of bit.
Yeah.
Would you be
If you
willing
look
to
at his-
denounce Joseph Smith as a
Yeah,
grifter right
no,
here?
for sure. I will denounce
Okay.
Joseph Smith. There is there. You look into the history of the church. They always they never teach about this, but then you find out he's like what's the process where you're putting a stick on the ground and then seeing if there's water underneath.
Water witching?
Yeah, he was a total grifter and
But why? I
cared a
mean,
lot
water
about,
witching does work. You know that, right?
Sure, buddy.
No.
it
I mean,
does.
there's
Okay.
actual there's actual scientific evidence that it works.
Okay, I would love to see that.
Not actually kidding. They just don't know if it's chance or not, because it's really hard to make a scientific experiment for a coin flip. Even that's actually difficult to do. Surprisingly,
Outside of the p-value, you're saying
Yeah.
because we can only really determine things that
yeah. But I mean, I've seen it with
improbabilistically.
my own eyes by farmers.
I think
can
I've
be
seen a
pretty
lot
good
of
at
things
it.
with my own eyes that I don't know if I could trust.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I don't know, man. On the water witching thing,
Sure.
I don't know. You know, I'm an engineer by trade, but I don't think those fuckers could just find it that way. I
Sure.
just don't think they could.
Sure.
But anyway, fair enough. $4.33 comes in from Mud. I'm sorry, I read that one already. $5 comes in from Gourdzilla37 and says, "Don't know if you heard, but Ethan Ralph's wife left him." Yes, I did hear that. I did hear that Fat Boy's wife left him. Terrible things. Awful. It's horrible. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but yeah, his wife left. Who would have thunk it? $5 comes in from Wicked Wally. Says, "How do you connect truce and in Hyrule philosophy, Staxioms?"
I was. What was the joke? Triforce.
No, he says linking statements. Oh,
Nice,
dude.
I'm so excited for Tears of the Kingdom.
Can we
Is anyone
time
else
him
excited?
out again? Can we
It's
time him
so-
out again? Can we
Is
do
anyone
that? I
else
think we
excited?
can.
It's coming out in 25 minutes. It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. $5 comes in from BPF Fashionista. No message entered by user. Appreciate that very much. $20 comes in from Anonymous. Says, "How do materialists overcome the argument of eugenics and social Darwinism without arbitrarily duct taping invented human ethics into their paradigm?" That's actually a really good
That's a great
question.
question. I do love that question. Honestly, I think eugenics is a really interesting conversation. I think that you can really easily. I think that you can factor in a lot of utility that comes across with any attempt at eugenics. Almost immediately leads to an eradication of a population, which I kind of just inherently mark as a really negative utility. And any positive utility of some kid. I think that life has an inherent utility, in of itself, and I think is extinguishing that is almost it is such a negative that whenever the Nazis tried to attempt it with eugenics and tried to basically destroy an entire population, that it's not worth any positive of gene manufacturing. But I think there are some conversations to possibly be had about gene editing or things like that, where we can talk about positive utilities that can come from, as long as there aren't any negative drawbacks. So I do think that there is some positive, there are ways to not have those negative things where you're literally extinguishing a population. That eugenics is
Resident Sleeper says, "Ha, you admit it."
Facts. True.
Anyway, I do appreciate that very much. Appreciate all the great support tonight that came into the Crucible. Jimbob, why don't you take a minute before I wrap this stream up and one more time shout your channel out to everybody where they can find you.
All right, thank you. Made by Jimbob is my YouTube. I do a lot of commentary. I do a lot of joking about new age stuff and taking the piss out of it. Staxioms and company. Even people who share your worldview would probably get a kick out of some of the things that I critique. And then Instagram is Made by Jimbob as well, where you can see my cultural, political commentary via crude cartoons.
And because Jimbob is so terrible at marketing himself, I'll end a couple of things by saying you can also pick up Savage Memes on madebyjimbob.com. The Volume 4 is what he's on right now. Savage Memes Volume 4. It's excellent in every way. If you ever want to see SJWs get completely wrecked in meme form with just a couple of doodles by a guy in a flannel, that's exactly the book that you want to see. You could beat your grandma over the head with it until she's not an SJW anymore. Anyway, moving over to Staxioms, you're not going to get the plug,
Thank you,
right?
Andrew.
But I'm
Appreciate
going to
it.
let you plug yourself.
I just
Go
keep
ahead.
clipping. Yeah, I keep.
I
clipping
appreciate that. If you're looking for SJW content, look for look for Staxioms anywhere. I'm mostly on TikTok. I make a lot of short form content, political conversations about trans issues and all of the SJW normal ass content. I know these guys are jealous that they can't get on a platform like that without immediately getting banned. And I'm hoping to jump on
Except
YouTube
I'm
and
there.
make more.
Except I'm on that
Oh,
platform.
okay. I'll follow
Yeah.
you. Sounds good.
Well, you should because I actually have a following. But no, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
I bet I have more
It was
followers
a
than
shot.
you.
It was
I
a
bet
shot.
I do.
What was the platform again?
TikTok. Follow me on TikTok.
No,
Staxioms.
I'm not on TikTok.
Oh, that's
I
what
only
said.
go over
Oh,
to TikTok and do debates.
Gotcha.
Like,
gotcha.
just for my personal account, I'll like jump into different like TikTok things
Sure.
that are going on and harass all the SJWs because I think it's hilarious. But
yeah.
but that's it for me. No, I'm guarantee. But like, what do you got to do to get followers on TikTok? All you have to do is like make an account, right? I mean, it's not hard, right?
Sure. I mean, if that's how you want to see it.
I'm fucking this guy. You
So
gotta let me
autistic.
bust your balls a little
at least
bit,
part
dude.
autistic.
Like just a little bit. You gotta put the cuckoo back of the clock for a second. Just have a nice laugh,
True.
Go ahead.
Follow me on YouTube as well. I'm making a bunch of long form content soon. And that's all. Thanks so much, Andrew, for having me. Thanks, Jimbob, for
course.
having this conversation.
Hey.
Yeah, no problem.
He was
Thank
about
you.
to
you
say
guys-
anytime, and then he was like, actually, never mind.
No, I was gonna say anytime. Yeah, you're welcome back to the Crucible anytime for any type of topic that you'd really like to dive into. And if you'd like to get matched with partners in the future for things that are more normative or this type of thing, you can just let me know and we'll get it taken care of. I really appreciated your presence tonight. I thought you did a very good job. So at
so
least
much.
representing your worldview, and it was very good faith. So I'm going to let you guys go. Have a great night. Coming up tomorrow night, you're going to be able to see Resident Sleeper, and he's going to be back for yet another debate. This one's going to be great. I am actually moderating that debate. That hadn't been the initial plan, but I'm happy to do it, and you'll be able to see that 9 p.m. Eastern. I appreciate all the great support, by the way. Next week, we have a series of debates coming up as well. We have Lavloon versus Mouthy Infidel and some other great ones that I mentioned earlier in the stream. Also, Super Show. Don't miss the Super Show. I will have vodka and beer, and I'll bust it out halfway through the Super Show. And I mean, it's going to be good. I've been working on it for a good solid week and a half, and I'm pretty confident everybody's going to enjoy it. Anyway, from all of us here at the Crucible to all of you out there in Crucible land, have a wonderful night. Wait, the question was asked, who's more cringe, wasps or libertarians? This is hard, but the thing is like I've talked with Kaz a lot in Fabian Liberty, and unlike wasps, I don't want to like instantly strangle them and destroy the entirety of, their whole species. So I think libertarians are better. I think libertarians are just a little bit better. And I think that even libertarians would agree that there must be a global eradication of mosquitoes and of the little bee blood-sucking fucking bastards. It's not even fair because bees can sting you, but then they die. So you get like the instant gratification of, oh, you got me, fucker, but you really got yourself. Not a wasp. A fucking wasp can just keep on doing it over and over and over again. It's bullshit. It's an advantage they shouldn't even fucking have. In fact, progressives, for the purposes of egalitarianism, should go out of their way to make sure they're just fucking eliminated. Just saying.